Chapter 1000. Last night, he carried Jing Kong on his back and was already sore. Today, he took the children to pray for incense for the whole day. Gu Jiao sympathized with her husband and consciously put back 2 boxes of Tao Tao in the drawer. Who knew that her husband was so stubborn that he walked over, opened the small medicine box, and took out the Tao Tao that she put back. 1 box, 2 boxes, 3 boxes. That's right, he even added another box. Gu Jiao, do you have some misunderstanding about how long you can last? The 2 of them spent an indescribably charming night, and they didn't stop until dawn. The couple, who were supposed to visit the Duke's residence on the 2nd day of the new year, didn't get up this time. The 3 little kids were sensible children. They rarely went to disturb their parents. Usually, they would disturb their uncle Sheng Guanqing. Now that Xian Yuanxi was back, the 3 of them changed to disturb him. Xian Yuanxi experienced the despair of being dominated by the little kids again. At dawn, he was pulled out of bed by the steamed bun army led by Xiao Yan. Children were really energetic. The 3 of them wanted to ride horses today. Xiao Yan wanted to ride horses. She voted for the 3 of them, and Xiao Tsong's objection was invalid. Xian Yuanxi took the 3 little tails to find little Shi. Little Shi wasn't in the stable at the moment. It went to the Black Wind King to flirt, but it was chased all the way by the Black Wind King. It escaped to the frozen lake and fell straight down. The Black Wind King was the same age as Gu Jiao. It was 24 years old this year, which was considered old for a warhorse. Ordinary warhorses began to enter old age at the age of 16. The horse's back would gradually droop, and its muscles would atrophy and become weak. However, these phenomena didn't seem to appear on the Black Wind King. It was still strong and healthy. Little Shi was beaten up badly. After a year, it thought it was strong, but when it came back, it realized that it was naive. Little Shi felt wronged. However, if one looked carefully, they would still be able to see the difference. In the past, when the Black Wind King beat it up, it didn't even blush or pant. But now, after beating it up, it panted on the spot for a long time. Little Shi stood up with a disheveled mane. She walked over to Black Wind King and rubbed her head against him. It was as if they were asking, "Hey, are you okay?" The Black Wind King left proudly. In the end, its back was not as straight as it was when it was young. Over the past 7 years, countless warhorses from different countries had challenged its authority, but it had never been afraid of challenges. It had used its absolute strength to defend the honor of the Black Wind Riders, and created its own legend. Even though it was panting heavily, its footsteps were still graceful and composed, and it carried an innate aura of slaughter and the domineering aura of a king. Little Shi silently followed behind it, mischievously stepping on its footprints. The Black Wind King turned around. Little 11 stared at it blankly. It opened its mouth wide and smiled at it. The Black Wind King retracted his gaze and continued to walk forward proudly. In the first month, the palace was immersed in the festive atmosphere of the Spring Festival. But one day, a piece of news from the border of the Zhao Kingdom broke the atmosphere. The western border of the Zhao Kingdom was breached, and more than 10 cities were lost. Was it done by the Liang Kingdom? Gu Jiao asked the Imperial Guard who delivered the letter. The western border of the Zhao Kingdom was actually bordered by the Yan Kingdom. But the Yan Kingdom did not do such a thing, and would not do such a thing. So only the Liang Kingdom was left. The Liang Kingdom was located southwest of the Zhao Kingdom, but it was farther away than the Yan Kingdom, and separated by a long waterway. The Imperial Guard hurriedly said, I'm sorry. It's not the western border, it's the eastern border." The Qin Kingdom? Gu Jiao still remembered the battle of the ancient Moon City 8 years ago. Why would the Qin Kingdom fight with the Zhao Kingdom? Was Yuan Tang crazy? 2 years ago, the Qin Kingdom's emperor died, and Yuan Tang ascended the throne. He had offended Prince Bo, and had a falling out with consort Rong's maternal family. His situation in the Qin Kingdom was not as peaceful as it seemed. Why would he attack the Zhao Kingdom? Besides, Yuan Tang had no reason to do so. The Imperial Guard braced himself and said, "It seems it's not the Qin Kingdom's army, it's the Wei Kingdom's." Gu Jiao had 2 doubts in her heart. Why did the Wei Kingdom attack the Zhao Kingdom? Why could the Wei Kingdom's army enter the Qin Kingdom so smoothly? The Imperial Guard continued. Also, there's one more thing. The Shadow Division has found out the name of that Lu Xiang. He's called Lu Yisheng. Although she had already guessed it, when it was confirmed, Gu Jiao was still shocked. The Zhao kingdom probably never dreamed that the orphan of the Lu family, who was bullied by the Quan kingdom like a rat crossing the street, would lead the Wei kingdom's army 8 years later, and break through the border of the Zhao kingdom, in one fell swoop, and seize 12 cities. Gu Jiao murmured, he's Yuan Tang's cousin. If his army enters the Chen kingdom, Yuan Tang will give him face. However, the Zhao kingdom's army is not to be trifled with. How did it fall to this extent? The Imperial Guard sighed. Speaking of which, it's also a coincidence that Marquis Xianping followed Princess Xinyang back to her fief, and is not in the court. The old Marquis Ding, and is also old. The most suitable generals to fight are the new commander of the Gu army, Gu Chongqing, and the marshal of the world Tang Yueshan. Gu Jiao frowned and said, the two of them have a high chance of winning. Yes, the problem does not lie with them. The Zhao kingdom's emperor imitated the Yin kingdom, and let the crown prince represent the emperor in battle to boost the morale of the army. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that the crown prince was an idiot and fell into someone's trap? He blindly commanded at the last moment, and caused the soldiers of the 3 armies to suffer. That's right. Who is the traitor? The 4th prince, Prince N. In Gu Jiao's memory, there was almost no such person. It was only when he was mentioned that she remembered meeting the 4th prince, when she first came to Zhaodu. When Lu Yisheng fell ill, the 4th prince was dissatisfied that she treated Lu Yisheng, and caused trouble for her on the street. Later, she accidentally bumped into Marquis Xianping, and the 4th prince finally let it go. However, this person's presence was not strong, and was not a big deal. Gu Jiao turned her head and forgot about him. Who would have thought that after lying low for 10 years, he would stab the crown prince in the back like this? Gu Jiao asked. He colluded with the Wei army? The Imperial Guard answered, yes. Gu Jiao said calmly. He once looked down on Lu Yisheng the most. Now, he actually colluded with Lu Yisheng. How ironic. Isn't that so? The Imperial Guard sighed. However, he did not end up well. After the incident, Lu Xiang turned around and exposed him. He also sent all the evidence of treason to Zhaodu, and handed it to the emperor. The emperor was so angry that he fell ill on the spot. Now it is Empress Dowager Zhuang who is handling court affairs. Speaking of this, the Imperial Guard could not help but sigh. Lu Yisheng is really ruthless. First, he tempted the 4th prince to betray the country. Then, he used the 4th prince to bewitch the crown prince. He made the 3 armies, and the people bitterly disappointed. In the end, he even stabbed the emperor in the heart. No wonder he could help the Prince of Wei unify the 13 divisions. This method and strategy were too frightening. The Imperial Guard sighed again. After this battle, regardless of whether Zhaodu falls or not, the future of these 2 sons is the same as being ruined. The people would not accept a prince who betrayed the country, and would not submit to a crown prince who lost half of the country. Who is the general of the army? Gu Jiao asked. The Imperial Guard said, Gu Chongqing. The crown prince was captured. He risked his life to save the crown prince, and was seriously injured. He paused and wanted to say something but stopped. Gu Jiao continued for him. If the emperor wants to protect the crown prince, he must find a suitable scapegoat. He must say that everything was done by that person on his own initiative. There is no one more suitable than the commander of the Gu army. If the emperor really does this, it will cause the Gu army to be at odds with him, and he will be completely alone. The more the Imperial Guard thought about it, the more he shuddered. This Lu Yisheng is really calculating. When Xian Yuanxi heard this, he immediately rushed into Gu Jiao's study. Jiao, I will fight. I will take back the cities of Zhaodu. He grew up in Zhaodu and Zhaodu was his home. Wait for my news in Chengdu. However, this time, Gu Jiao did not let him go alone. In February, Zhaodu lost another city. Gu Chongqing went out to battle with injuries. He and Gu Qingfeng led the Gu family army to fight back, and took back 2 cities. However, the Wei army did not seem to care about the plundering in the rear. They only cared about advancing into the hinterland of Zhaodu. If you take a city, I will take another one. Let's see who is faster. Gu Jiao fought with the Wei army under such circumstances. It was a cold spring morning. The sky was gloomy and dark clouds covered the sky. The two armies were at daggers drawn at the riverside of Li City. Gu Jiao was wearing red clothes and black armor. She was riding on the back of the powerful Black Wind King with a cold expression. Beside her were Little Shi and Xianyuan Shi, who were also wearing armor. Although it was called an army, it was actually only the two of them. The others were still on the road. Their horses were not as fast as the Black Wind King and Little Shi. The Wei army was happy. They had an army of 5,000. Wasn't it fun to capture 2 people alive? Who are you? A general of the Wei army asked. His surname was Mo, and he was a young general who was less than 30 years old. Xianyuan Shi rode his horse forward. The young man said frivolously, Who are you to ask about my sister's name? Tell Lu Yixing to come out. Gu Jiao and Xianyuan Shi had strong auras. However, they were too young. Gu Jiao was 24 years old, but she looked younger than 20. Xianyuan Shi was even worse. A 13-year-old child could not pretend to be an adult. Moreover, the two of them were almost alone. Therefore, General Mo did not take them seriously at all. Gu Jiao said lightly, I want to see Lu Yixing. General Mo sneered. You think you can see Prime Minister Lu just because you want to? Who do you think you are? I don't mind telling you this. Even if the Prince of Zhao country comes, our Lord will not see him. As soon as he finished speaking, a white shadow flashed from behind the Wei army and rushed straight at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao did not dodge. Xianyuan Shi's first reaction was to sneak attack. He was about to shoot an arrow when Gu Jiao gently grabbed his wrist. The little white shadow rushed into Gu Jiao's arms. Gu Jiao hugged the chubby little ball and asked in surprise, Little sure? Meow, it rubbed against Gu Jiao. 9 years ago, it was placed in Lu Yixing's home by Gu Jiao. At that time, it was just a little ball of kitten. Now it was several times bigger and heavier. It almost filled Gu Jiao's arms. It's Little Sure? Xianyuan Shi was stunned. He had only heard about Little Sure from Jiao Jiao. He had never seen it in person. The Wei army was even more surprised than him. They had already recognized that the cat was the Prime Minister's beloved pet. The Prime Minister loved cats as much as his own life, and took it everywhere with him. It was the only cat that dared to tear the Prime Minister's memorial into pieces, without worrying about being punished. It was very delicate. It was very fierce, very hard to please, and did not like to be close to people. Other than the Prime Minister, no one could touch it. It had even scratched the Emperor of Qin country with its claws. Now it was actually throwing itself into a stranger's arms? Were their eyes playing tricks on them? Or did the young man use some trick to trick it? General Mo drew his sword from his waist. Let go of the Prime Minister's beloved pet. Otherwise we'll kill without mercy. Stop. A cold voice sounded from behind. General Mo was startled when he heard the voice. The Wei Kingdom army automatically opened up a path, and a man dressed in Wei Kingdom armor slowly rode out on his horse. Xianyuan Shi did not recognize him. Gu Jiao found him familiar. After staring at him for a few seconds, she frowned. Jun Xiuhan? Jun Xiuhan was a student of Yin Kingdom's Jianan Academy. 8 years ago, he was Gu Jiao's competitor during the selection of the Black Wind Cavalry commander. He successfully advanced to the last round. However, he took the initiative to give his bamboo tube to Gu Jiao in the bamboo forest, and said to Gu Jiao, I owe someone a favor. Now I'm returning it to you. Gu Jiao could not figure out who he was talking about. Could it be? Jun Xiuhan rode his horse to the front of Gu Jiao. Xianyuan Shi stopped him with his spear. Don't get too close to my sister. Hearing the word sister, Jun Xiuhan's eyes were not surprised. He calmly looked at Gu Jiao and lightly said, Commander Shao, we meet again. Lu Darren wants to see you. Recently, I'm a bit prone to tears. Good night, see you tomorrow. Chapter 1001. Under the dumbfounded gazes of all the Wei soldiers, 2 young people who came out of nowhere were brought to their camp by Lu Xiang's trusted aide. In a spacious and clean tent, Gu Jiao saw Lu Yixing, whom she had not seen for many years. He was already 30 years old. He had lost some of his youthful aura and gained some of the calmness and elegance accumulated over the years. He also gained some of the nobility and fierceness of a person in a high position. 9 years could change a person a lot. Gu Jiao had heard people call him Lu Xiang in her dreams when she returned to the Marquis's mansion. She knew that one day he would be conferred the title of Marquis, but seeing him in person was different from what she imagined. Perhaps she didn't expect that he would trample over the mountains and rivers of the Zhao country and return with the determination to take revenge. When Gu Jiao was looking at Lu Yixing was also looking at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao had also changed a lot. The birthmark on her face was gone, revealing her sealed beauty. It was unfamiliar, but also pleasantly surprising. At the age of 24, she was as beautiful as a fairy. What didn't change was the vigorous vitality in her body, as well as the pure look in her eyes that didn't contain any impurities. It seemed that no matter how many years had passed, no matter how many things had happened, her heart had never changed. "I'll go out first," Jun Xiuhan said. "Okay." Lu Yixing agreed. Jun Xiuhan glanced at Xian Yuanxi. "I'm not going out," Xian Yuanxi said. Lu Yixing gave a rare smile. "It's okay." Jun Xiuhan was shocked. He had never seen Lu Yixing smile before. Lu Yixing said to him, "You go do your own thing. I'll be fine here." Jun Xiuhan glanced at Gu Jiao and said, "Her martial arts are very high." Then he looked at Xian Yuanxi. This guy isn't weak either. He had seen Gu Jiao's skills and knew that she was a formidable expert who could defeat Han Yi. And according to the information they had, the general beside her should be the Marquis of Champion Xian Yuanxi. But he wasn't a person. If they attacked Lu Yixing in the tent, he wouldn't be able to save them. "I know," Lu Yixing said. But since Lu Yixing said so, Jun Xiuhan could only leave first. There was only one attendant in the tent. Anu. Gu Jiao looked at him. Lu Yixing was in a good mood. His eyes were full of smiles. "Yes, you still remember. Anu, do you remember Miss Gu?" Anu nodded and saluted Gu Jiao. He was a mute slave and couldn't speak. He had grown taller and was a mature and steady bodyguard. Gu Jiao nodded to him. "Jing Kong, right?" Lu Yixing looked at Xian Yuanxi, who was beside Gu Jiao. Xian Yuanxi's eyes widened. "Oh, you know me?" Lu Yixing said bluntly, "We've met before. Have you forgotten?" Xian Yuanxi suddenly realized. "Ah, Brother Ming I remember now. You saved us." Lu Yixing said pleasantly, "Then I've been investigating you for the past few years." Xian Yuanxi. "Oh." He didn't ask why he was investigating him. 9 years ago, when Gu Jiao saw Lu Yixing off, she played the zither for him in the pavilion. That time she brought Jing Kong with her. Jing Kong asked Lu Yixing about it out of curiosity, and found out that he and Gu Jiao were close friends. When he went back, he bragged to his bad brother-in-law that Jiao Jiao and Lu Yixing played the zither, and the zither together, which made his bad brother-in-law very jealous. Later, when he grew up, he understood that the zither and the zither were not meant to be played that way. Moreover, Lu Yixing played the flute with Jiao Jiao in the carriage. Xian Yuanxi curled his lips and said, "We're here to beat you up, but you don't seem to be asking for it." The main reason was that he didn't feel any murderous intent or malicious intent towards Jiao Jiao from Lu Yixing. He smiled, as if he didn't mind Xian Yuanxi's straightforwardness. He came to the short table, sat down, and asked the two of them, "Would you like some tea?" Xian Yuanxi didn't want to drink. He curiously looked at the weapons and books in the tent. "Feel free to look around," Lu Yixing said pleasantly. Xian Yuanxi looked at Gu Jiao. After seeing Gu Jiao nod, he went to look through the books and weapons. Gu Jiao sat opposite Lu Yixing. Lu Yixing picked up the boiling kettle from the stove and made 3 cups of tea. Gu Jiao asked, "How did you meet Jun Xiuhan?" Lu Yixing said, "His mother is from the Zhao kingdom. Before his father took him back to the Yin kingdom, we lived in the same alley. We met a few times. Once he fainted from hunger. I carried him home." Gu Jiao suddenly understood. No wonder. Lu Yixing handed the tea to Gu Jiao. His family in the Yin kingdom wasn't very well off. Fortunately, he worked hard and got into the Jianan Academy. You can almost guess what happened after that. I met him by accident and learned about you from him. I guess that Xiao Lulang was you. Gu Jiao picked up the teacup. During the Black Wind Cavalry selection, he helped me. He said it was to repay someone's favor. Lu Yixing took back his hand, paused and said, I don't know about that. Gu Jiao looked at him. How have you been these years? Lu Yixing smiled faintly. As you can see, it's neither good nor bad. How about you? How have you been? Gu Jiao said honestly, very good. I like it very much. She liked her current life and everything she had experienced. Lu Yixing smiled with relief and bitterness. Is he good to you? Gu Jiao was stunned. My husband? He's very good to me. Lu Yixing lowered his eyes and took a sip of tea. That's good. Do you have hatred in your heart? Gu Jiao asked directly. Lu Yixing clenched the teacup in his hand and stared at the floating tea leaves in the cup. After a while, he said in a low voice, Yes. The royal family of the Zhao kingdom slaughtered my entire family. How can I not hate them? I live like a dog. I let anyone bully me. Anyone can step on me. If anyone is unhappy, they can take it out on me and the people around me. No, I don't have any people around me. I only have a mama and a mute slave that I bought halfway. Gu Jiao had heard and seen the scene of him being framed. At this moment, when she heard him mention it again, she suddenly felt that the past was shocking. Lu Yixing's misery that the world saw might only be the tip of the iceberg. He grew up in endless bullying, and the seed of hatred had long been planted in his heart. He laughed at himself. You shouldn't have helped me. If you had let me die of illness on the street, the country wouldn't have almost been destroyed. The Zhao kingdom won't be destroyed, Gu Jiao said. Lu Yixing looked into Gu Jiao's eyes. You want to fight with me? Gu Jiao didn't avoid his gaze. Yes. Lu Yixing smiled sarcastically. If you want to kill each other, why do you need to know each other? Gu Jiao said. It's my duty to save you, and it's my mission to kill you. You are a good doctor and a good general. Lu Yixing put down the cold tea in his hand and stood up lightly. Why don't we have a bet? If you win, I will immediately withdraw my troops and never invade the Zhao kingdom again. If you lose, you have to promise me one thing. Gu Jiao said without hesitation. Okay. Lu Yixing frowned. You don't want to ask what the condition is? No. Gu Jiao said. Lu Yixing clenched his fingers. Miss Gu, do you know that people are sinister? If you do this, I will do whatever I can to win you. You should bargain with me, and let me know that even if I win, I can't get what I want. Maybe then I won't have such a strong desire to win. What do you want to bet? However, Gu Jiao replied to him with this calm sentence. You. Lu Yixing choked, and turned his face to calm down. When he turned his face again, his face was calm. I heard that you are Mr. Meng's disciple. You play a game of Go with me and decide the winner. If it's a draw, you win. Okay. Gu Jiao agreed without hesitation. Lu Yixing looked at Xin Yuanxi, who was reading in front of the bookshelf, and said gently, In Jing Kong, there is a box of Go on the second shelf. Can you pass it to me? Oh, okay. Xin Yuanxi found the Go box and passed it to him. He set the Go board, grabbed a handful of white Go pieces from the box, clenched his fist and said to Gu Jiao, Guess first. Gu Jiao picked up a black Go piece. Odd. Lu Yixing opened his palm. There were 3 Go pieces. It was indeed an odd number. Whoever guessed correctly would play black, and the black player would go first. Gu Jiao placed her Go piece first. She placed her Go piece on the upper right corner of the Go board. She didn't have enough control over the corners, but it was a good place for Gu Jiao's swift and decisive personality. Little Shi rolled up on Gu Jiao's lap and closed its eyes comfortably. Gu Jiao played Go while stroking the cat. It didn't seem like a life and death game. She was quite comfortable. Lu Yixing raised his Go piece and glanced at Little Shi. Little Shi felt a chill on its back and curled up in Gu Jiao's arms. Sir! Outside the tent, General Mo rushed over in a hurry. Glancing at the tightly shut tent behind Jun Xiuhan, he whispered, What's going on? If you ask me, who should I ask? Jun Xiuhan retorted. General Mo didn't dare to argue with Lu Yixing's confidant. He scratched his head and said helplessly, I'm just worried about your safety. Speaking of which, who are those 2 people? They seem to be wearing the armor of the Yin Kingdom. Are they reinforcements sent by the Yin Kingdom? You don't have to worry about them. It's none of your business, Jun Xiuhan said and added lightly, It's none of my business. My lord, are you jealous? Ahem, General Mo cleared his throat. We're about to take down the Zhao kingdom. We can't let anything go wrong. The Zhao kingdom has a strong army these years. This is a good opportunity. If we miss it, it'll be difficult to attack the Zhao kingdom again. Marquis Xianping was not in the court. Tang Yueshan stayed in the capital. The crown prince tricked the Gu army. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There wouldn't be a next time. Jun Xiuhan said coldly. If you can think of it, how can Sir not think of it? General Mo's eyes lit up. So we'll continue to play? In the tent, Gu Jiao put down the last piece. I lost. Lu Yixing said, you lost by half a point. Gu Jiao said, that's still a loss. Lu Yixing said, I told you that I'll win. In fact, it was very difficult to win. She was so good at chess that he almost exhausted all his energy to win by half a point. Gu Jiao said, you must accept your loss. Tell me your conditions. Xianyuan she pricked up his ears. What conditions would Lu Yixing ask for from Jiao Jiao? The way he looked at Jiao Jiao was different. Would he ask Jiao Jiao to leave her bad brother-in-law and be with him? Or would he ask Jiao Jiao to stand by and not participate in the final battle between the Wei kingdom and the Zhao kingdom? Or would he ask Jiao Jiao to send troops to help him conquer the world? To everyone's surprise, Lu Yixing just stood up and walked to the box. He quietly took out a guqin and put it on the table. Can you play a song for me? Gu Jiao looked at him strangely. This is your request. Lu Yixing smiled. If you can have a meal with me and listen to a play. Gu Jiao took the guqin. Lu Yixing cleared the table. Gu Jiao's fingertips moved, and the sound of the guqin flowed out from her fingertips. It was like the sound of the ninth heaven, like the sound of a mountain stream. She played the graceful grace that she played for him on the day of his departure. The difference was that she added the second half of the reflected shadow. Lu Yixing gently played the flute, just like many years ago on the night when she sent him off. Xianyuan she listened attentively. After a long time, he realized that he was holding an arithmetic book with familiar handwriting. It had Jiao Jiao's annotations on it. Did Jiao Jiao give Lu Yixing a book before? In the evening, the three of them had dinner together and went to the theater in the city to listen to a play. The friendship between gentlemen was as light as water. There were no warm words or intimate actions between them, but it was a silent, tacit understanding. I should go, Gu Jiao said. Lu Yixing stared at her deeply. Be careful on the road. After this farewell, she didn't know if she would see him again in this life. Gu Jiao nodded and reluctantly returned the little shur that she had been carrying all the way to Lu Yixing. Then, she and Xianyuan she mounted their horses. Lu Yixing suddenly called her. Under the night sky, his eyes were like stars. Miss Gu, thank you for the book you gave me that year. 3 days later, the army of Wei State withdrew. The soldiers of the 11 cities had all retreated. Lu Yixing didn't take anything with him from Zhao State. His luggage was very simple. Other than a set of clothes, there was the cat in his arms, and the 11 books that she gave him. I met you at the most miserable age, but you didn't coldly step over my dirty and rotten body. You bent your beautiful waist and stretched out your clean hand to me. Chapter 1002. Zhao's crisis was resolved, but the court's crisis had just begun. The crown prince was ignorant and incompetent, obstinate and self-opinionated. Although he was benevolent, he couldn't take on important responsibilities. More importantly, even Xiao Ji thought that his nephew couldn't take on important responsibilities. Xiao Ji didn't think that an emperor needed to be wise, but at least he couldn't be too stupid. The crown prince wasn't just stupid, he was also a bit narrow-minded in some matters. For example, when he heard that Xiao Ji and Xiao Heng were silent about the memorial to depose him, he actually complained to Empress Xiao. The father and son were holding a grudge against him for taking away Wen Linlang. Who was Wen Linlang? The father and son had long forgotten about this person. He still had the nerve to mention it. With his pig brain, if he succeeded the throne in the future, and was instigated by someone with ulterior motives, how could Xiao Heng have a good life in the future? Xiao Ji was originally silent, but now he wanted to drag him down from the throne. Tang Yueshan was Empress Dowager Zhuang's trusted aide, and Empress Dowager Zhuang was Gu Jiao and Xiao Heng's backer. Even without Empress Dowager Zhuang's reminder, Tang Yueshan wouldn't speak up for the crown prince. As for the old marquis and the old chancellor, the crown prince didn't even need to think about it. Only now did the crown prince realize how laughable the power in his hands was. The emperor still had 3 princes. Consort Yu's son, Rui Wang, Consort Shu's son, King Liang, and the 16-year-old 7th prince Qin Shiyu. Rui Wang had done many things for the court and had a high reputation among the people. He also married Duke Luo's granddaughter, so he had a certain background. Consort Shu was the old marquis's daughter. On the surface, she and King Liang had Marquis Ding and the Gu army behind them, so they had a certain amount of support in the court. On the other hand, Qin Shi was young and a bully in the directorate, so his reputation wasn't good. Few courtiers proposed making him the crown prince. The emperor's head hurt. On the other side, after Xian Yuanxi returned to Yin, he immediately led troops to attack Liang. This was revenge for the civil strife in the southwest. Liang Gua naturally did not admit it verbally, but did it matter whether he admitted it or not? If I want to hit you, I don't care if you feel wronged or not. The one who came to fight was an unexpected person, his brother Ming-er. Ming-er was 6 years older than little Jing Kong. She was 19 this year. In the early years, they had written letters to each other. Later, Xian Yuanxi frequently visited the Yin kingdom, so they wrote fewer letters to each other. After joining the army, they could no longer keep in touch. Who would have thought that they would meet again on such an occasion? Unfortunately, Ming-er was not Lu Yisheng, and Xian Yuanxi was not Gu Jiao. This battle was destined to be unavoidable. Both sides were in a state of frenzy. Xian Yuanxi rode on horseback and viciously chopped down with his spear. Ming-er swung the long sword in her hand and blocked his red-tasseled spear. He had a hard time blocking it. It was hard to imagine that this was the power of a 13-year-old boy. The Black Wind cavalry was brave and skilled in battle. The soldiers of the Liang kingdom fell one by one. Ming-er gritted her teeth. You said you wouldn't kill my soldiers. Xian Yuanxi sneered. You also said you would retreat 30 miles for me. Neither of them kept their promise. Don't laugh at each other. Xian Yuanxi won this battle. Ming-er fell off the horse. Xian Yuanxi pointed his spear at his heart. Guards, tie him up. Ming-er stared at him fiercely. You might as well kill me. You are my brother Ming-er. How can I bear to kill you? Xian Yuanxi slowly withdrew his spear and raised his hand to wipe away the blood on his cheek. He said coldly and domineeringly, Isn't it good to use you to threaten the Liang kingdom? You. Ming-er was tied up. He was furious. My mother still cares about you. Xian Yuanxi carried the spear on his shoulder and said casually, I will visit the princess consort another day. You don't have to worry about me. Ming-er stomped his feet. I am so angry. Xian Yuanxi fought all the way to Bianjing, the capital of the Liang kingdom. The king of the Liang kingdom was trembling in fear. Someone came up with an idea to let the king of the Liang kingdom hand over the most beautiful princess. Since ancient times, even heroes could not resist the charms of beautiful women. However, Xian Yuanxi did not even look at the little princess of the Liang kingdom. He plundered a pile of trophies and returned to his country. The second to suffer was the Chen kingdom. Yuan Tang was furious when he heard about this. What did the Chen kingdom do? Why did they attack me? The guard beside him muttered. It was because you allowed the army of the Wei kingdom to pass through and caused the border of the Zhao kingdom to fall. Did you lose your memory? Moreover, you also wanted a share of Baoshan Island. You even wrote a letter to threaten the king of the Yin kingdom. Have you forgotten? Yuan Tang's mouth twitched violently. Even the powerful army of the Liang kingdom could not withstand Xian Yuanxi's attack. How could the small Qin kingdom? After thinking about it, Yuan Tang felt that this trouble was caused by his cousin. He went north to the Wei kingdom without saying a word. He lay down on the bed in Lu Yisheng's mansion and said shamelessly, I don't care. I was implicated by you. If I, the emperor, fall, you will raise me. Lu Yisheng frowned. Get out. Yuan Tang rolled up the quilt. I won't. The Qin kingdom suffered a severe defeat. Xian Yuanxi was not a belligerent person, but Shangguan Yin was a woman and was looked down upon by the other countries. If they were not beaten until they were convinced, they would become even more aggressive in the future. After the Qin kingdom, it was the turn of the Jin kingdom and the Zhao kingdom. He did not attack the Zhao kingdom. After all, the Zhao kingdom was Jiao, and the Zhao kingdom emperor's idea of Baoshan Island was extinguished in the cradle by Empress Dowager Zhuang. He fought this war for 2 years. When he reached the Wei kingdom, he was already a 15-year-old teenager. The Wei emperor had already ascended the throne. He looked at the memorial sent from the border, with a confused face. I didn't bully the Yin kingdom. Is this guy crazy? He wants to beat whoever he catches? His trusted minister said. He is probably thinking about the matter of us sending troops to the Zhao kingdom. I told you to stop Lu Xiang, but you insisted on competing with Xiao Ji. Who knew that the one who fought in the end was not Xiao Ji? He didn't let Xiao Ji lose face. Instead, he planted a future trouble for the Wei kingdom. The Wei emperor glared at him. The Wei emperor ordered, "Go and call Lu Xiang." The eunuch went and soon returned to the palace to report. Lu Xiang said that he won't fight with Miss Gu's brother. If you want to fight, you can fight by yourself. The Wei emperor. What kind of unreliable prime minister was this? The eunuch coughed softly. However, Lu Xiang gave you a trick, a honey trap. Lu Yixing's original intention was to let the Wei emperor give himself to Shangguan Yan, the kind that would be wrapped in a gift box. Who knew that the Wei emperor would misunderstand and directly let the female official send his own daughter out? The trusted minister and the eunuch were convinced. Your Majesty, haven't you heard the rumors about this divine general of the 6 kingdoms? How many people have offered him beauties? From princesses and infanta to beauties of the common people. He didn't like any of them. No, he wasn't good-looking at all. Everyone broke out in a cold sweat for the little princess of the Wei kingdom. The Wei emperor didn't have a son, and only had this one daughter. If she angered Xianyuan Shi and was killed, the Wei kingdom would have no descendants. When the princess of the Wei kingdom heard that her father wanted to offer her as a bargaining chip to ask for peace, of course she didn't agree. The eunuch advised her not to be willful. The little general of the Xianyuan family was extremely brave and famous. If she fought with him head-on, the ones who would suffer would be the soldiers and common people at the border. The princess of the Wei kingdom clenched her small fists. At worst, I'll kill him myself. The north wind was strong, and 50,000 black wind cavalry were at the border. Xianyuan, she was wearing the golden armor passed down by the grand marshal. His legs were slender, and his posture was tall and straight. The cold helmet was put down, covering this face that was the best in the 6 kingdoms. 3 months ago, the Black Wind King and Little Shi had a battle between kings. No matter how unwilling Little Shi was, he had to challenge the Black Wind King. This was the way the Black Wind Cavalry passed down. Only by defeating the Black Wind King and becoming the new king could he lead the Black Wind Cavalry to the next golden age. After a fierce battle, the Black Wind King fell to the ground in a sorry state. However, there was no trace of embarrassment or despair in his eyes. He seemed to have been looking forward to this day for a long time. The Black Wind Cavalry welcomed a new inheritance. He bowed down to Little Shi and acknowledged Little Shi's position. The new Black Wind King was born. At this moment, Xianyuan Shi was riding on the back of the new Black Wind King's horse. One man and one horse were like thousands of soldiers and horses. They were unstoppable. General, Wenren Chong reminded him in a low voice. The Shadow Division has found out that the Wei Kingdom is going to use a honey trap. Please be careful. Xianyuan Shi didn't even bat an eyelid. Honey trap? How is that possible? He wouldn't be tempted by those so-called beauties, he said arrogantly. None of them are as beautiful as Jiao. Wenren Chong's eyes narrowed. Sir, it seems that the Wei army is going to attack. Over there, someone is attacking from there. Indeed, someone was coming. However, after taking a look, Wenren Chong felt that something was wrong. What's this? Riding on a white pony? Although the person on the horse was also wearing armor, it was obviously not fitting. The helmet was swaying and looked like it could fall off at any time. Wenren Chong suddenly had a déjà vu of a child wearing an adult's clothes. He was stunned for a moment before he said, Sir, I'll go and fight. He was just a rookie. He could kill him in one move. Xianyuan Shi, where are you? Come out and face your death. The child opened his mouth arrogantly. However, It was unknown whether it was because of fear or something else, but his voice was trembling and somewhat immature. Xian Yuanxi frowned and urged his horse to rush out. On the vast battlefield, dust was flying everywhere. The two horses galloped towards each other. That person looked at Xian Yuanxi, who was clad in golden armor, rushing towards him like a war god from the ninth heaven. That fierce killing intent instantly frightened him to the point that his face turned pale. I'm here to kill. Wah, I don't want to kill. I want to go home. Little Wei Jun raised his head and cried. The rest of the Wei soldiers couldn't bear to watch. The helmet on little Wei Jun's head, which was already several sizes too big, fell off with a clatter, revealing a small head. His jet-black hair cascaded down like a waterfall and was lifted by the strong wind, brushing past his delicate and lively face. Xian Yuanxi's expression froze. The killing intent around him froze, and he abruptly tightened his grip on the reins. The sudden braking caused little Xi's hooves to scrape across the ground, causing sparks to fly. He stopped when he was 3 steps away from his opponent. He stared at him for a long time before he finally called out his name. Light Xue. Shengguan Xue was stunned. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Xian Yuanxi's aura was too frightening. She trembled just from looking at him. Xian Yuanxi pushed his mask up, but felt that it wasn't enough. He simply took off his helmet. It's me. Shengguan Xue blinked her tear-filled eyes. She asked in a daze, Jing Kong? The solemn god of war youth revealed his first bright and moving smile on the battlefield. Light Xue. Shengguan Xue's eyes widened. Jing Kong. Time seemed to return to many years ago, when people came and went in the state preceptor hall. 2 little kids faced each other, flapping their tiny arms and leaning forward. One was squeaky and the other was babyish. Light Xue. Jing Kong. Light Xue. Jing Kong. Light Xue. Jing Kong. It's really you? Xian Yuanxi took a step forward on little Eleven's back, and the already scared little white horse began to tremble even more. He raised his hand and gently wiped away the tears on her cheeks. You still haven't learned how to ride a horse? Yes. Shengguan Xue nodded, feeling wronged. Then why did you still come to fight? And to kill me? Shengguan Xue said pitifully. I'm the princess of the Wei Kingdom. If I didn't come, I would have been sacrificed to that Xian Yuanxi. Xian Yuanxi's lips curled into a smile. So that's how it is. Shengguan Xue's horse was scared and so was she. Both of them were trembling violently. Xian Yuanxi couldn't help but laugh and reach out his hand to her. As people grew up, their hearts would gradually become cold and hard. This was especially true for Xian Yuanxi, who had fought on the battlefield at the age of 12. His heart had long since built a wall that no one could easily walk in. However, they had met at an innocent age, and had spent the most innocent and beautiful time together. She had always been in the depths of his heart, like a family member. She had always been in the softest part of his heart. Shengguan Xue hesitated for a moment before giving her hand to him. She trusted Jing Kong unconditionally. The fair and chubby hand that he had held when they were young had now become a slender young girl's. Xian Yuanxi held her in her palm, and with a gentle pull with her other hand, she carried her by the waist and placed her on little Eleven's back, making her sit in front of her. Shengguan Xue finally let out a long sigh of relief. The fearless little princess was afraid of nothing but riding a horse. Xian Yuanxi gripped the reins tightly with both hands and protected her in his arms. Then he turned his horse around. The soldiers of both countries were shocked. What was going on? Weren't you two going to kill each other? How did you end up on the same horse? Black Wind Cavalry. General, something's wrong with you. Wei Jun, Princess, something's wrong with you. Shengguan Xue was suffering from the aftereffects of fainting on horses. Her brain was a little muddled, so she didn't realize what was going on. Xian Yuanxi didn't care. He used his broad body to block her petite figure and put his helmet on her head, covering her delicate and beautiful face. Then, he glanced coldly at the Black Wind Cavalry. Everyone lowered their heads in unison. It was so tightly covered that they couldn't see anything even if they wanted to. Shengguan Xue was naive and didn't know what Jing Kong was trying to do. She shook the helmet on her head and giggled. She leaned her back against Xian Yuanxi's firm chest. She wasn't someone who didn't know her manners. Normally, she wouldn't get close to any man other than her own father. However, he was Jing Kong. He was the kindest, bravest, purest, and most trustworthy little boy in the world. Sheng Guanshui forgot that the little boy in the past was 15 this year. He was a hot-blooded young man. The two of them rode on the horse. The young man protected the person in his arms in a domineering and gentle manner. Compared to when she was kidnapped by an assassin when he was only 5 years old, he could only bite the assassin with his little steel teeth. Now he had absolute power. No one could hurt her from his hands. Little Shi took a few steps forward. Sheng Guanshui's almond eyes widened. I suddenly remembered that you know how to ride a horse in Jing Kong? You're amazing. Xian Yuanxi smiled gently. There are many things that I'm amazing at. I'll tell you about it later. The young man's voice was clean and warm, like the most gentle breeze on the grassland. Yes. Sheng Guanshui nodded. I've written many letters to you over the years, Xian Yuanxi said softly. Although Yin Shanjuan's mansion was empty, someone would regularly collect the letters. He didn't know where Light Shui had gone, so he could only send the letters there first. Sheng Guanshui frowned. Really? I haven't received a single letter. I've also written many letters to you, but you never replied to me. Xian Yuanxi narrowed his eyes. Very good. The Wei Emperor had detained her. Sheng Guanshui sat in his arms and stroked the horse's mane. She asked, Is this little Shi? Xian Yuanxi said, Yes, you recognize it? Sheng Guanshui nodded. She couldn't help but exclaim, Wow, little Shi is so impressive. Little 11 raised his neck valiantly and took a step forward without any regard for his family. After knowing that it was little Shi, Sheng Guanshui's last trace of fear disappeared. When she was young, she really liked little Shi. She thought of something and asked, But Jing Kong, why are you here? Do you know Xian Yuanxi? Xian Yuanxi smiled. I know him. Is he powerful? Sheng Guanshui continued to ask. Xian Yuanxi's expression didn't change as he said, Very powerful. Sheng Guanshui's face turned pale with fright. Then, will he kill me and my father? He won't. Xian Yuanxi suppressed the smile on his face. I promise you. Sheng Guanshui patted her chest in relief. Where are we going now? Where do you want to go? Xian Yuanxi asked her. Sheng Guanshui tilted her head and thought for a moment. I want to see my teacher. Xian Yuanxi said meaningfully. See your parents. Ha! Sheng Guanshui didn't understand. Xian Yuanxi's lips curved. I said okay. Chapter 1003. Zhao State Rinshou Palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't have a good appetite these days. Eunuch Qin always asked the imperial kitchen to cook for her in different ways, but she couldn't eat much. Eunuch Qin secretly delivered a letter to the Blue Water Alley, but was stopped by Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang glared at him. Eunuch Qin sighed. He knew that she didn't want the younger generation to see her sick, but his heart ached. Empress Dowager, His Majesty is here. Outside the bedchamber, a palace maid reported. Seeing that Empress Dowager Zhuang was sick, Eunuch Qin whispered, How about this servant go back to His Majesty and tell him that you are resting? Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the crescent moon hanging in the night sky. She pressed down the tiredness between her brows and said, He must have come at this hour for proper business. Yes. Eunuch Qin went to invite the emperor in. The emperor stepped into the room and looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang, who was sitting on a chair with an official's hat. He asked worriedly, Is mother feeling better? This son was a little stupid, but his concern for the Empress Dowager was not fake. It was rare that Empress Dowager Zhuang did not roll her eyes. She said indifferently, I have been fine for a long time. It is you who make a fuss every day. Speak, it is so late. Why are you looking for me? The emperor sat down beside his mother and said helplessly, To be honest, I do have something to discuss with you. The appointment of the crown prince? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked, hitting the nail on the head. The crown prince had already been deposed for 2 years, and the calls for a new crown prince in the imperial court were getting louder and louder. If the crown prince was not appointed soon, there would be a struggle for the throne among the factions. The emperor silently agreed. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at him and asked, What are your plans? The emperor said, I believe that Rui Wang is qualified for a great responsibility. He paused for a moment before continuing. However, little Qi has restrained himself a lot in the past 2 years. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the boundless night sky. Little Qi is 18, almost 19. At his age, Aheng has already become the top scholar. Yes, the emperor sighed. Your son is hesitating between Rui Wang and little Qi. I want to hear your opinion. Empress Dowager Zhuang said indifferently. I don't have any objections. You are the emperor. Whoever you establish is the Qin family's kingdom. Mother. The emperor didn't like her separating herself from him so clearly, as if she didn't belong to this family. Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. What? I've worked hard for the royal family of Zhao country all my life. Can't you give me a few days of peace? The emperor frowned. What is Imperial Mother talking about? You are going to live a long life. All right. I'm not used to hearing those things. Empress Dowager Zhuang waved her hand and opened the candied fruit jar on the table. Inside was the candied fruit that Jiao Jiao had made for her. She had been saving 3 pieces a day for 5 days. She took out a candied fruit, stared at it, and said, I only have one question for you. If Rui Wang succeeds the throne, will little Qi be convinced? The emperor hesitated. Empress Dowager Zhuang continued. If he is not convinced and rebels, will Rui Wang be able to handle it? A trace of disappointment flashed across the emperor's face. He definitely won't be able to handle it. Rui Wang had Duke Luo's mansion behind him, but Qin Chuyu had the entire Marquis Shuangping's mansion behind him. If the relationship between Princess Xinyang and Xiaoji eased, she would also help him. He also had his sworn brother, Xian Yuanxi, and the youngest son of the Minister of War. Su Kong Xiaoheng's connections didn't include the emperor's. Another very important point was that little Qi was the legitimate son of the emperor's wife. The answer was self-evident. It wasn't easy to not fight for this position. Even if little Qi wasn't greedy for the throne, how could Empress Xiao be willing? How could the ministers who wanted to succeed the emperor be willing to give up? Empress Dowager Zhuang said earnestly. To be the emperor, you don't have to be the smartest one, but you have to be the most suitable one to stabilize the country. Only by letting Qin Chuyu ascend the throne, the other princes wouldn't dare to have any ideas about the throne. After all, no one had the confidence to succeed in a rebellion under Xiaoji's control. Empress Dowager Zhuang glanced at him and said, Besides, little Qi isn't as bad as you think. Don't underestimate him. A naughty child who grew up in Jingkong would have been ruined if he didn't have some skills. The emperor pondered for a moment. I understand. After the emperor left, Empress Dowager Zhuang couldn't bear to eat the candied fruit and put it back in the jar. Eunuch Qin went forward to pour her a cup of warm water. Seeing her absent-minded appearance, he couldn't help but ask, The matter of the crown prince has been settled. Do you have anything else on your mind? Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at him deeply and said abruptly, You're old. Eunuch Qin was stunned and then smiled. I'm not a monster. How can I not be old? Empress Dowager Zhuang pursed her lips and wanted to say that she was old too, but she swallowed the words and asked, You and I entered the palace in the same year, right? Eunuch Qin smiled. Yes, but I didn't have the fortune to serve you in the first few years. Empress Dowager Zhuang sighed. You didn't have a godson or anything. If I leave, your pool of little bastards can't really take care of you when you're old. Eunuch Qin suddenly choked. Why do you always talk nonsense these days? I'm just a lowly eunuch. It's not worth remembering. Empress Dowager Zhuang was never a sad person. She was very calm. How long has Xiaoshen been in Yuzhou? It's time to return to the capital, right? Eunuch Qin wiped his tears and said, Counting the days, it's time to go back. Empress Dowager Zhuang wanted to say something but stopped. Gu Xiaoshen went to Yuzhou before the end of the year. He got married 3 years ago. His wife was the daughter of a scholarly family chosen for him by his great-aunt. Their family lived in the capital, and their ancestral home was in Yuzhou. He went to Yuzhou to accompany his wife to worship their ancestors. He was also commissioned by the Ministry of Works to go to Yuzhou to help build a royal garden. He took time to take his wife to Qingchuan village. He had long severed ties with the Gu family. Naturally, he didn't go to visit them. He went to visit his third uncle and third aunt's graves. Who would have thought that as soon as he entered the village, he would meet his mother, Madame Lu. Madame Lu was fetching water at the entrance of the village. She was a lot older. She was in her 40s and had a lot of white hair. A dirty little girl was squatting next to her. The little girl randomly picked up something on the ground and put it into her mouth. When Madame Lu found out, she immediately hit the little girl's hand. "Put everything into your mouth. I'll eat you to death." The little girl didn't know if it was because of pain or fear, but she began to cry. "You only know how to eat and cry. What else can you do?" Madame Lu scolded a few times. The little girl cried even more fiercely. Madame Lu was so angry that she hit her several times. Gu Xiaoshan couldn't help but remember that when he was a child, he was also beaten and scolded by Madame Lu. And because he was naughty and stubborn, Madame Lu beat him especially hard. If the child was disobedient, he would beat him a few times. He wouldn't hate Madame Lu because of this. He was bitterly disappointed with Madame Lu, because Madame Lu never had a son in her heart. Madame Lu only valued Gu Ershun, who was smarter than her and knew how to please people. "Husband, what's wrong?" his wife Chunyun asked. "Nothing, let's go." Gu Xiaoshan helped his wife get out of the carriage. Madame Lu saw him at a glance. "Ah, is that Xiaoshan?" Auntie Zhao, who had just come over with a basin of clothes, recognized him. Auntie Zhao was very surprised. "Oh my God, I almost didn't recognize you." Gu Xiaoshan had changed too much. When he left the village, he was only a 13 or 14-year-old hooligan. He didn't even walk properly. Now he was wearing a brocade robe. He was handsome and elegant. At first glance, he looked like a son of an aristocratic family. The woman wearing a veil next to him was luxurious and elegant. She had a dignified manner. She looked like a daughter of an aristocratic family. Who would dare to recognize him? The villagers came over to watch. Madame Lu looked at Gu Xiaoshan in a daze. The bucket in her hand fell into the well. She couldn't believe her eyes. This man, who was more noble than the county magistrate's son, was really her idiot son? Cough, cough, cough. The accompanying imperial bodyguard was sent by the prefectural magistrate. He was afraid that Master Gu would encounter an accident on the road, so he must carefully protect the safety of the couple. He cleared his throat and politely said to the villagers, "Everyone, please don't push. Master Gu came back to visit his family's grave. Please let him pass." "What did you call him?" Madame Lu came over and asked. The imperial bodyguard didn't know her. He only thought that she was an ordinary villager. He patiently explained, "Master Gu. Master Gu is a popular person in the imperial court. This time, he came to Yuzhou to build a mansion under the imperial decree." The imperial court. Under the imperial decree, Madame Lu almost fainted. If she had known that Gu Xiaoshan was so promising, she wouldn't have sold him for 20 taels. She should have sold him for 200 taels. No, 2,000 taels. No, what did she sell him for? He was an official, so she was the official's mother. That's right, she was the official's mother. She could hold her head high. "Stinky boy, you still know to come back. When you went to the capital, you didn't care about me and your father. Your conscience was eaten by a dog." As she spoke, she rushed towards Gu Xiaoshan. But Gu Xiaoshan was no longer the obedient son that she used to know. She was the one who cut off their mother-son relationship. Gu Xiaoshan stepped back. She pounced on empty air. The imperial bodyguard didn't know whether Madame Lu was telling the truth or not, but he saw Master Gu's attitude clearly. He immediately stood in front of Madame Lu. Not long after, Gu Chonglu also heard the news and rushed over. When he saw the current Gu Xiaoshan, he was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. The hooligan that the Gu family looked down on the most suddenly changed and became a popular person in the imperial court. He tried to talk to Gu Xiaoshan, but he was also stopped by the imperial bodyguard. Daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law, I'm your father-in-law." When he saw that Gu Xiaoshan refused to acknowledge him as his father, he hurriedly asked Chun Yun for help. Women were soft-hearted. As long as she begged for mercy for him, Xiaoshan would definitely listen. Chun Yun didn't even look back. The Gu family didn't have a good life these years. Old Master Gu passed away, leaving behind a mess. The eldest branch and the second branch separated. Gu Dashuan's road to the imperial examinations didn't go smoothly. When the news that Xiao Lulang was the top scorer in the imperial examinations spread to the village, his mentality collapsed. After that, he did worse and worse in the examinations. In order to pay for his imperial examinations, his family owed a large debt. Later, although he found a rice merchant's daughter as his wife, his father-in-law saw that he always failed in the examinations and was unwilling to support him. He had no choice but to become an elementary school teacher in town. He was arrogant and had no patience for students. After being fired several times, no private school would hire him. Back then, the second branch dreamed of letting Gu Ershun take the imperial examinations. They sold Gu Xiaoshun for 20 taels and spent it all on Gu Ershun. In the end, it all went down the drain. Xiaoshun, we're your biological parents. You can't treat us like this. Is there any justice in this world? Aren't you afraid that we'll report you to the yamen? A crime of being unfilial. Let's see if you can still be an official. Do you have any respect for the law? He's my son. My biological son. Gu Xiaoshun pretended that he didn't hear anything. The villagers all knew everything. The matter of the second branch selling off Xiaoshun, who in the surrounding villages did not know. How could a child who was sold out come back to take care of his parents in old age? How shameless. Gu Xiaoshun didn't stay in the village for long. He took his wife to sweep the graves of his third uncle and third aunt, burned incense, and kowtowed for Gu Jiao, Xiaoheng, and the people of Jingkong. In fact, Gu Jiao's room had always been filled with memorial tablets of the third branch of the Gu family. Every year, they would worship them on their death anniversary, Qingming Festival, and New Year's Day. If she was away on an expedition, Xiaoheng would also buy incense and paper money to worship them. Gu Xiaoshun returned to the capital in April. When they were close to the capital, Chen Yun suddenly fainted. Gu Xiaoshun hurriedly sent someone to the capital to deliver the news. Gu Chongqing happened to be in Bishui Alley. I'll take you there. Gu Jiao, okay. The two went to the courier station, outside the southern gate of the capital. Gu Jiao took Chen Yun's pulse. Then she smiled and said to Gu Xiaoshun, Xiao Yun is pregnant. It's too stuffy in the carriage. She'll be fine after resting for a while. Gu Xiaoshun was stunned. I'm going to be a father? They had been married for 3 years, and this was their first child. The joy in his heart was indescribable. When Chen Yun woke up and found out that she was finally pregnant, she was so excited that she almost cried. She had been married for 3 years without a child. She was in despair. Although no one in the family urged her, she always hoped that she could bear a child for her husband. The group of people sat in the carriage. Gu Chongqing rode alone on the side of the carriage. He silently guarded his sister in the carriage, as well as his sister's family. This was an ordinary afternoon. Even the late spring weather was the same as before. This was destined to be an ordinary day. Suddenly, the curtain of the carriage was lifted. Gu Chongqing turned his head to look at his sister, who had lifted the curtain. He asked, "Is something the matter?" Gu Jiao looked at him under the sunlight and smiled. "Brother." Gu Chongqing's heart was struck. The afternoon sunlight shone directly into his heart. On the other side, this year's imperial examinations had also finished. When Zhuang Yuheng was exiled, he had been stripped of his scholarly achievements. However, the emperor did not say that he would not be allowed to take the imperial examinations again. He just never appeared in the examination room. It was because of this that Empress Dowager Zhuang understood that he did not want to return to the capital. However, this year, he appeared in the capital's examination hall and took first place in the palace examination in March. He became the first person in the history of the Zhao country to walk through the main gate of the imperial palace twice and parade through the streets on horseback. He went to Renshou Palace and knelt on the ground. He kowtowed heavily to Empress Dowager Zhuang. He lowered his eyes and said in a tearful voice, "Great aunt." Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at Zhuang Yuheng, who was over 30 years old and thin. She waved her hand for him to come forward. Zhuang Yuheng held back his sobs and walked forward on his knees. Empress Dowager Zhuang clenched her handkerchief and punched his shoulder. She punched again and again. Her eyes were red and her throat was swollen. "You just came back. You just came back." In May, Xiaoheng handled a vicious bribery case that involved more than half of the Hanlin Academy. Although there were no fish in the clear water, there was a limit to everything. More than half of the Hanlin Academy's officials were involved. This was an extremely terrifying matter. When the results of the investigation came out, Xiao Heng never expected that the mastermind behind the scenes would be the current Hanlin Academy scholar. In the prison cell, the scholar of the Hanlin Academy confessed to his crimes. He accepted bribes and manipulated the examination of the scholars. He enrolled the scholars with low scores into the Hanlin Academy and falsified their qualifications and political achievements so that they could enter the 6 ministries. In the interrogation room, Xiao Heng, who was wearing a purple official's robe, sat on a chair. He looked at the scholar of the Hanlin Academy opposite him with a complicated expression. Why? Ning Ziyuan smiled bitterly. Lulang, not everyone is born in the clouds. I'm just an ant from a poor family. I don't know how much effort it takes to climb up step by step. I'm not afraid of suffering, but sometimes suffering is useless. I know you want to say that you also relied on yourself to get to where you are today. I admit this. No matter how the world misunderstands you, I always believe that you relied on your own talent. But Lulang, I don't have your talent. I had an ambition that didn't match my talent. I didn't keep my heart. Xiao Heng calmly walked out of the prison of the Ministry of Justice. Many years ago, in a certain room of the Hanlin Academy, Ning Ziyuan patted him on the shoulder and said with great ambition, "Don't look at me because I was born in a poor family. I have no background and no connections. Sometimes I dream that one day I can climb up. I don't need to climb too high. Becoming a 5th-rank Hanlin Academy scholar is my life's dream." He clenched his fists, as if he wanted to force out the contempt he had suffered along the way from his bones. I'm thinking when I have such a day, when I take charge of the Hanlin Academy, I will not appoint people for their money, for their connections, and for their obedience. I will not allow people to make trouble for me. A bolt of lightning flashed. A hole seemed to be opened in the sky and rain poured down. He stared at the endless rain, a trace of confusion flashing through his eyes. After a while, his eyes regained their firmness. He opened the umbrella and walked into the rain with firm steps. Empress Dowager Zhuang's health had been fluctuating this year, sometimes good and sometimes bad. She couldn't eat the candied plums and jujubes that Gu Jiao and the old chancellor had personally made for her. She had accumulated a lot of candied plums. Xianyuan, she sat at her bedside and said softly, "Great aunt, eat as much as you want. I won't tell Jiao Jiao." Empress Dowager Zhuang smiled. "Where's my little granddaughter-in-law?" Xianyuan, she's ears turned slightly red. Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. "You're the same as your brother-in-law. Don't learn from him. You've been married for so many years before you can eat it." In August, Gu Jiao brought Xuanningsiang and Gouwa from the countryside. Gouwa was a year and a half younger than Jing Kong. He was 14 this year, and was a handsome young man. Empress Dowager Zhuang lay on the soft phoenix bed, and looked at the figure walking towards her in the light. She asked weakly, "Is it Xiangxiang?" Xuanningsiang knelt on the ground, and held her great aunt's hand. She choked with sobs. "It's me, great aunt, it's me. Where's Gouwa?" Empress Dowager Zhuang asked. Gouwa stood beside Xuanningsiang, but her eyesight was no longer good. Xuanningsiang felt like a knife was being twisted in her heart. She pulled her son aside. Gouwa, quickly kowtow to the Empress Dowager. Gouwa knelt down and kowtowed 3 times to the Empress Dowager Zhuang. "Why do you keep kowtowing? You're hurting the child." Empress Dowager Zhuang took out a piece of sesame candy from under her pillow and handed it to him. "Gouwa, eat." Gouwa loved sesame candy the most when he was young. Xuanningsiang covered her mouth and cried uncontrollably. Gu Jiao brought the 3 little ones to live in Rensho Palace. "You're not noisy," Empress Dowager Zhuang occasionally said to the 3 little ones. "Your uncle from Jing Kong was really noisy when he was young." It wasn't that the 3 little ones weren't noisy, but they were very quiet in front of her. Even Xiao Yan, the little loudspeaker, sensibly suppressed her natural instincts and primitive strength. Xiao Heng, Xianyuan Shi, Gu Xiaoshan Gu Yan, and Gu Xiaobao also visited her every day. Gu Chongqing and Gu Qingfeng also came often. It was worth mentioning that Gu Chongqing and Yuan Baolin had a daughter, but Gu Chongqing still believed that he was fulfilling the agreement. Yuan Baolin told him, "A woman needs a son to live the rest of her life peacefully." The one-track-minded Gu Changqing began to fulfill the agreement to give Yuan Baolin a son. Gu Jiao was shocked when she learned about this. She never expected Gu Changqing to be so one-track-minded. She asked Yuan Baolin, "What if you have a son? How will you coax him into bed?" Yuan Baolin raised her chin and said, "Then I'll tell him that a son is too lonely. If anything happens in the future, he won't have a brother to support him. You see, you have 5 brothers." Gu Jiao silently gave a thumbs up. Empress Dowager Zhuang was asked about her well-being by everyone in the room. She hummed and said, "Don't you have something to do?" The old chancellor also came. However, he always stayed there quietly and didn't say anything. Empress Dowager Zhuang couldn't see, so she naturally didn't know he came. In the 12th month, Empress Dowager Zhuang's memory deteriorated, and she often called the wrong person. She would call Xiaoxian Jingkong and Gu Xiaobao Guyan. She also asked Gu Jiao where Xiaoshan went, and whether Lulang went to the prefectural city for the exam again. She listened to the snow outside the window and said, "It's cold. Did Lulang bring enough clothes? The exam shed in Yuzhou is cold, unlike the capital." "He brought enough." Gu Jiao said, "Great Aunt, don't worry. Xiaoshan went to the academy for lessons." Great Aunt pulled the banknote in her hand and touched Gu Jiao's hand. "Give it to him for me. He fell out with the Gu family and went to live in the academy. He can't be full easily." Gu Jiao took the banknote. "Okay, I'll go to town to get it for him. Do you want to eat candied fruit? You can eat as many as you want today." Empress Dowager Zhuang closed her eyes and fell asleep. Gu Jiao quietly lay down beside her, pulled open her arms, and gently buried her head in her arms. On New Year's Eve, Xianyuan she welcomed his 16th birthday, and Xiaohong also welcomed his 30th year. Empress Dowager Zhuang was in good spirits. When she got up, she ate 6 candied fruits in one breath, which made Eunuch Qin very happy. Originally, the birthday banquet was to be held in Rinshou Palace. But Empress Dowager Zhuang wanted to play the leaf card, so the family returned to Bishui Alley. Empress Dowager Zhuang, Auntie Lu, Granny Zhou, and Auntie Lu gathered at the table. Since Great Aunt's eyesight deteriorated, Gu Jiao made the leaf card into mahjong, which could be touched with hands. The old chancellor stood behind Great Aunt and served her tea obediently. He also handed over his private savings. Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her eyebrows and snorted. "I'm in a good mood today, so I'll let you lose less." The neighbors actually wanted to go easy on her, but they found that there was no need. Even if the old lady became like this, she still beat the whole Bishui Alley. The neighbors lost miserably. Yao Shi was making pastries in the kitchen, and Princess Xinyang went to learn from her. Gu Xiaobao and Xiao Yi, the 2 older children, led a few younger ones to set off firecrackers in the alley. Xianyuan she didn't join in the fun. He moved a chair behind Empress Dowager Zhuang and gently rested his delicate chin on her shoulder. Empress Dowager Zhuang said with disgust, "What? Is it sticky?" "That's right, sticky, go away." Gu Yin came over and pushed Xianyuan Shi away, leaning on Great Aunt's shoulder. Empress Dowager Zhuang exploded. "You're 27. What is this? You don't want to find a wife. Xiaoshuan's son can already buy soy sauce." Xiaoshuan's baby, who was still in her stomach. Gu Yin stuck to her and said, "Then you can talk to my mother and let me marry you, ya. Empress Dowager Zhuang rolled her eyes and thought, "You're talking nonsense. This kind of thing depends on fate. How can everyone be happy?" She only wanted him to live, and he did it. She had nothing to be dissatisfied with. She pushed the cards in front of her and said, "Draw a win." In the afternoon, Empress Dowager Zhuang slept in her room for a while. Xianyuan she also lay down to accompany Great Aunt. "When I was young, did you really want to sleep with me? You always dragged me to your room." Empress Dowager Zhuang said coldly, "That's because I want a little great-grandson." Xianyuan she said, "I don't care, you just like me." Empress Dowager Zhuang. Such a shameless person. "Xiaoji, give me back that shy little monk." Xianyuan she wanted to tease Great Aunt, but he really fell asleep. When he woke up, it was already dark. He called Great Aunt beside him. Great Aunt didn't respond. He was so scared that his face changed. "Great Aunt," Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly, "what are you arguing about? Do you think I'm going?" Xianyuan she hurriedly said, "That's not what I meant." Empress Dowager Zhuang lazily said, "Don't worry, today is New Year's Eve. I won't leave on New Year's Eve. I won't turn your and Aheng's birthday into the anniversary of my death. How sad would that be?" On the first day of the new year, a large family from Bai Shui Lane entered the palace to give her a New Year's greeting. She held Gu Jiao's hand and had Gu Jiao take good care of eunuch Qin. Empress Dowager Zhuang passed away on the third day of the first month. She had been in good spirits for the past few days, and her memories were no longer in chaos. Everyone thought that she had gotten better, but nobody expected that she would sleep and never wake up again. She passed away in her sleep, and she left very peacefully. She didn't leave behind any last words. She just heard eunuch Qin say that she took out a book of poems that she had written before she got married and looked at it. Empress Dowager Zhuang had been in power for dozens of years. The people only remembered her fierce and overbearing methods, but they forgot that she had once been a gentle daughter of a noble family. She had dedicated her life to the country of Zhao. She had countless opportunities to completely leave the imperial family and live a carefree life outside. But she didn't do this. It was for the sake of the country, and it was also for the sake of her children not being shamed because of her. The imperial palace was a cage that had imprisoned her for her entire life. The Empress Dowager had passed away, and according to the ancestral rules, she would be buried in the imperial mausoleum with the previous emperor. Xiao Heng submitted a memorial, requesting that a separate tomb be built for Empress Dowager Zhuang. It was not in the name of Empress Dowager Zhuang, but in the name of Zhuang Jinsei. She had been imprisoned while alive, but she had to be freed after death. On the day that the tomb was built, Gu Jiao, Xiao Heng, Jing Kong, Gu Yan, Gu Xiaoshun, Gu Xiaobao, Gu Chongqing, and Zhuang Yuheng came to support the coffin of their grandaunt. Their grandaunt did not leave behind any children in this world, but they were all grandaunt's children. If there is an afterlife, I hope that you will not enter the imperial family. Chapter 1004. Galaxy K93. In the vast and boundless universe, a silver-white spaceship was nimbly shuttling through a dark red asteroid belt. The celestial bodies that looked small through the telescope were actually huge, and they had their own trajectories. Plus, the spaceship itself was moving faster than light. It looked like a very dangerous dodging game. But this wasn't a problem for it. After all, it wasn't an ordinary spaceship, but the strongest battleship of the Imperial Marshal. It had accompanied the Imperial Marshal through the long and glorious years of war, setting the pinnacle of the entire galaxy, and even the entire Federation. There were many rumors about it. Some said that it was a battleship that the Imperial Marshal spent a lot of money to get someone to custom make it. Some said that it was a secret weapon that the Imperial Marshal's grandfather left him. But there were also rumors that it was originally a nanny robot, the kind that made milk for the little Marshal and changed his diapers. The cute AI's voice sounded, and it seemed to be a little excited. Obstacles can't be avoided. The elimination plan will be implemented. Do you want to stop it? The man sitting on the back of the chair with his eyes closed didn't even lift his eyelids. The AI's voice became even more excited. The elimination plan is officially activated. Warm reminder. Halfway through the sentence, the man casually raised a hand that was still slender and beautiful even though he was wearing white gloves. With a click, he fastened the safety buckle on the back of the chair. The AI made a satisfied mechanical sound like an old father. Baby is so obedient. The man's thin lips opened slightly. Call me baby again and I'll smash you. It was unknown if it was threatened, but the AI really didn't say anything. However, it didn't give up and flashed a line of words on the screen, as if to show its last bit of unyielding will. Can't be smashed. The man still had his eyes closed, but he seemed to have guessed its little action. He said calmly, cancel the autopilot. The AI admitted defeat in a second. Marshall is so awesome. Next, it began to focus on eliminating the unavoidable asteroids. Under normal circumstances, the Federation's battleships wouldn't randomly destroy celestial bodies in the universe. However, this mission was urgent, and they couldn't care less about the Federation's laws. At the same time, on an orange planet, a total of 30 battleships were ready to set off. This was a newly risen group of space pirates in the star system. Most of them were fugitives who had escaped from prison. They had already successfully robbed 10 space supply stations of the Federation and 2 supply planets of the Empire. The Federation attached great importance to this matter and had once sent a legion to encircle and annihilate them. However, there were traitors among them who were very familiar with the Federation's battleships and fighting style. They did not fight head-on and fled after firing a shot. They were extremely cunning. The Federation had a huge headache over this. Recently, they had set their eyes on another supply planet controlled by the Will family and were planning to take action tonight. However, before they could set off, a dark spaceship suddenly appeared in the dark night sky above their heads. It slowed down after entering the planet's atmosphere and hovered steadily above the 30 battleships. The first to discover it was a gun-wielding sentinel. At first, he thought that it was their accomplice, but later he found out that it wasn't because the bottom of the black battleship was impressively printed with a huge federal military emblem. It's a Federation battleship. It was as if he was facing a great enemy. Everyone was on their guard. Just like Shi, they found it inconceivable. What about their defense system? Did it fail? Why was there no interception or warning? Why did they let this battleship barge in, as if it was unmanned? The galactic pirate leader gave the order to prepare for battle. How many battleships are there in total? The pilot at the side said in a daze. One. The Federation only sent 1 battleship? The galactic pirate leader was dumbfounded. One had to know that the Federation had sent out the same number of battleships, but they were still unable to annihilate them. Could it be that the Federation was not here to fight with them, but to negotiate? At this point he smiled smugly. Then there's nothing to be afraid of. Destroy it. Negotiate? That was impossible. He gave the order, but there was no response from the other battleships. He frowned. What's going on? The pilot pointed at the battleship in the sky in horror. Look. The battleship in the sky started to light up in large patches. Its black outer shell was like a layer of scales that had been flipped over. Layers of dazzling silver light appeared. Along with this unforeseen event, its enormous body was revealed before everyone. The galactic pirate leader's body shook. This is the number 1 battleship in the Federation's galaxy that accompanied the Empire's marshal to conquer the entire Federation. World Terminator. Through the spacious viewing window of the battleship, a man in a black uniform looked down at everyone from above. This was the most handsome man in the entire Empire, but also the most brutal and cold-blooded man. He was tall, and his uniform fitted him perfectly. Even the buttons were buttoned up to the top of his collar. He was strict and ascetic. His skin was deathly pale under the cold light. He held a golden scepter with the star of the Empire in his hands. This was a symbol of his status, and also a signal of death. The Empire's marshal was not here to negotiate. He was here to annihilate the pirates. The kind that did not leave anyone alive. The galactic pirate leader, who was still feeling smug a second ago, was completely panicking at this moment. Didn't the Empire's marshal go on an expedition to the K-34b galaxy? He would not be back for at least a few decades. Why did he? If the Empire's marshal had not left, they would not have dared to rob the Federation's supply planet and space station, even if they had 100 guts. What should we do? The galactic pirate leader broke out in cold sweat. Not only him, but the rest of the galactic pirates were also scared silly. This was the Empire's youngest general, the only marshal in the entire galaxy, who had intimidated the entire Federation. He was born into a fallen aristocrat, and had the lowest resources, but he still managed to carve out a bloody path for himself in the Federation. No one dared to go against him. Run quickly. It was unknown who shouted this, but everyone seemed to have woken up from a dream. They all jumped onto the battleship and prepared to escape. The Empire's marshal looked coldly at the galactic pirates who had killed countless civilians. It was as if he was looking at a group of ants who did not know where to go. The Terminator is requesting to execute orders. The AI's mechanical voice became cold and domineering. The Empire's young master marshal said word by word, "Extermination plan execute." The AI's mechanical voice sounded again. "Extermination plan is about to begin. Civilians, please evacuate. Extermination plan is about to begin. Civilians, please evacuate. Extermination plan is about to begin. Civilians, please evacuate. Countdown begins. A row of blinking numbers appeared in the boundless starry sky. It was a 2-minute countdown. The galactic pirates were extremely fast. In just a minute, they had already left in their respective battleships. At superluminal speed, they could travel to several planets in a minute. Even though there were no longer any battleships on the ground, the countdown in the night sky continued. Until the last second, the Terminator began to chase after the fleeing battleships. 30 seconds later, the universe returned to peace. In the cockpit, the Terminator's AI resumed its cute mechanical voice. Baby, it's time to eat. Tonight's dinner is very sumptuous. However, the Empire's marshal did not manage to eat this dinner. On their way back, they encountered the collapse of a star. This huge star had collapsed for a long time and had been relatively stable. It was estimated that it would burn for at least 100,000 years. However, for some unknown reason, it had burned out prematurely. In the last few seconds, it suddenly collapsed to form a black hole. The Terminator was captured by the black hole's gravitational force. An alarm that had never been sounded before sounded in the cockpit. They could not return. Star System K-93. The Empire's marshal calmly welcomed his death. He had gone on expeditions everywhere. There would be a day when he would die on the way. He stroked the control panel and said softly, "Terminator, your service ends here. You are the glory of the Empire." The AI was silent for a long time. Then it said solemnly, "Marshal, you too." The next second it said calmly, "Hibernation chamber activated." The interior of the cockpit changed rapidly. The original visual window disappeared and was replaced by a wall with a screen. A luxurious hibernation chamber that could supply people for hundreds of years rose from the ground. The Empire's marshal frowned. "Terminator, what are you doing?" The AI sounded very calm. Hibernation chamber separated. Medical cabin activated. Weapons cabin ready to attack. Welcome the black hole's gravitational force. Goodbye, Marshal. As soon as it finished speaking, a terrifying impact swept through the entire hibernation chamber. The Empire's marshal's brain waves vibrated to the extreme. Then a strong sense of dizziness hit him, and he lost consciousness. On the screen, a few lines of words flashed. Habitable planet captured. Positioning: Virgo supercluster, Milky Way Earth. Chapter 1005. The Marshal woke up in a war motion. The first thing he did when he opened his eyes was to call for the Terminator. Following the sound of air leaking, the hibernation pod above his head slowly opened. The gentle AI voice sounded. "The medical pod is at your service. You have slept for a total of 1,221 days. Welcome to your awakening. We will now conduct a full-body checkup for you." He lay motionless in the hibernation pod, allowing waves of red light to scan his body. The AI said, "Checkup complete. Your vital signs are normal. Overall evaluation, excellent. You are indeed the most powerful marshal in the Empire." Awesome. This was the voice and program set by the Terminator. However, the Marshal knew that it did not have the consciousness of the Terminator. The consciousness of the Terminator would forever remain in the battleship that was engulfed by the black hole. The rumors were right. The Terminator was initially a nanny robot that accompanied him through his lonely and bullied growth period. After he modified his own battleship, he retained the intelligence of the nanny robot. This led to the creation of the Terminator. And the Terminator seemed to have awakened its own consciousness through the modifications and updates. "Baby, today is also a day for you to eat obediently." The AI's cute voice sounded in the medical pod. This was also one of the programs set by the Terminator after it had awakened its consciousness. The Terminator was unbelievably huge. Its medical pod was also huge. It would take at least an hour to walk through every corner. Of course, the Marshal was not so free. As he ate his dinner, he connected the medical pod's equipment to the planet's data. This planet called Earth was at the stage of a first-level civilization. It had yet to develop the energy of the other planets in its galaxy. The life forms on Earth had very low energy levels, and their lifespans were only a few hundred years. After they died, it was almost impossible for them to feed back to the habitable zone. The K93 galaxy also had all kinds of life forms. They were also called humans. The difference was that the life forms on K93 had extremely long lifespans and high energy levels. After they died, they would disintegrate, and the energy they contained would feed back to the entire galaxy. After learning more about Earth, he roughly compared the differences between himself and the people on Earth. He was probably equivalent to a teenager on Earth. In the hibernation chamber, people would not grow. Not counting that period of time, he was actually more than 30 years old. However, in the K93 galaxy, where lifespans were extremely long, those under 35 years old were considered young. If he hadn't lied about his age when he went to the imperial capital to join the army, he wouldn't have been able to get in. He learned more about the people on Earth, and then began to check the medical cabin's reserves. The AI reported in an orderly manner. When it read, "The hibernation chamber is operating normally," he was stunned. He had already come out. So why was the hibernation chamber still running? "Which hibernation chamber?" he asked. The AI said, "Hibernation chamber number 2. The general opened the number 2 hibernation cabin and saw a baby inside. It was only then that he remembered that he had passed by a supply planet that had been robbed by space pirates a few days before he left the K93 galaxy. It was there that he had picked up a dying child. The baby was too weak and had been lying in the healing chamber the entire time. When the Terminator was born, the healing chamber automatically entered hibernation mode and became the number 2 hibernation chamber." The AI said, "Vital signs are weak. Do you want to switch to the healing chamber and continue the treatment?" The Imperial Marshal looked at the sleeping baby. This was perhaps the only companion from the K93 galaxy. "Switch," he said. The medical cabin sat on top of a mountain. As it was hidden in another space, no one here could see it. The general walked out of the medical cabin and planned to go down the mountain for a walk. Unexpectedly, the gravity here was different from that of K93, and he fell to the ground. The general hadn't been in such a sorry state for a long time. Just as he struggled to get up, he heard a quarrel nearby. He had already learned the language of this area and could understand what they were arguing about. It was a young man and woman. The woman, with her big belly, grabbed the man's arm and said through gritted teeth, "You have to make things clear today. What is going on between you and that woman?" The man coldly withdrew his arm and said impatiently, "Can you not be unreasonable?" The woman raised her phone angrily. "I am unreasonable? Surnamed Gu. I caught you in the act." The man looked at the photo on the phone and frowned. "When did you secretly take this?" The woman coldly said, "Do I need to secretly take a photo? You two are so open and aboveboard. You are just short of living in my house." The man bluntly said, "Don't talk nonsense. We are not in the kind of relationship you think we are. We are just colleagues who had a meal together. Don't be so suspicious. It's getting late. I should go back to the company. You can take a taxi back yourself." After saying that, he left the woman behind and walked to the top of the mountain. The parking lot was probably on the other side of the mountain. The woman angrily chased after him. "Surnamed Gu, I am pregnant, and you are planning to leave me here alone." The two of them pulled and tugged at each other until the woman accidentally bumped into the Imperial Marshal when they brushed past him. Because he hadn't adapted to Earth's gravity, the general couldn't avoid it. The woman's ring cut the back of his hand, and fresh blood flowed out. The woman didn't apologize. He looked at the blood on the woman's ring and said in the local language, "Give me the ring." "Scram. I have to compensate you with a ring for bumping into you. In your dreams. Where did this little rascal come from?" The woman scolded. She wanted to say, "Where did this little rascal come from?" But when she saw the excessively handsome face of the youth, she suddenly choked. The youth was tall and wore a neat black uniform. His whole body emitted an ascetic and strict aura. The woman was stunned. Just at this moment, the man walked away. The woman didn't have time to pay attention to the youth in the military uniform and quickly chased after him. He looked at the woman's gradually disappearing back and deeply frowned. "You better not get hurt." Unfortunately, The woman was injured in the process of stopping the man from getting on the car. 2 months later, a white and chubby baby girl was born. Her cries were loud and clear, and she was more beautiful than ordinary newborns. Her family gave her a pleasant name, Wuxia. Chapter 1006. AD 2222 was the 8th year since he came here. He finally found the child who had infected his blood on the hillside that day. It should have been the woman who had cut him with the ring, but for some reason, the energy in his blood had been absorbed by the child in the woman's belly. This was the only human who could survive after absorbing the energy of the K-93 system. He brought her back to the medical cabin with the intention of studying her. The little girl was small and was soaked in the rain. Her large black eyes looked at him with vigilance and curiosity. This was a pretty little girl with an abnormal calmness. However, she was still a child. She maintained her calm appearance, but her small fists were clenched tightly by her side. "Lie down." He pointed at the cold operating table and said. The little girl stared at him for a long time before obediently lying down. He put on sterile gloves and began to take her blood and hair. He also did a series of ECG and brainwave tests. The little girl was very cooperative and quiet throughout the process. She didn't even resist when the needle was inserted into her blood vessels. "Does it hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "This pain was nothing. Come here and eat something." He took off his gloves and said calmly. The little girl jumped down from the operating table and looked at his back. She said in a daze, "My clothes are wet. Do I have a change of clothes?" "Of course, there isn't anything suitable for you." He took one of his pajamas and tossed it to her, pointing to the bathroom. The little girl took the clothes into the washroom and came out half an hour later. Her hair was wet and her body exuded a faint cold aura. The large pajamas on her small body were so loose that it almost reached the ground. He looked at her and frowned. "You didn't use hot water?" The little girl's eyes widened in surprise. Is there hot water?" There was, but the Imperial Marshal was used to cold water, so he turned off the hot water function. It was his negligence. He had never raised a child, and had never been close to anyone. He had forgotten that the people here were different from the K-93 system. But this girl was also strange. Did she not know how to use it? How did she survive all these years? Was it okay to take a cold shower? Dinner was a tasteless steak prepared by the medical cabin. The stool at the dining table was very high. The little girl tried for a long time, but still couldn't sit on it. Instead, she was sweating all over again. Even so, he did not hear her ask him for help. In the end, it was he who lifted her onto the stool. She grabbed the knife and fork clumsily and ate with relish. His movements were slow and deliberate, with the elegance of an ancient aristocrat. Then he realized that the little girl was imitating him. She straightened her back, and did not even let go of his habit of folding his handkerchief to wipe his mouth. The results came out the next day. The amount of K-93 energy in her blood was too high. Logically speaking, she shouldn't be so calm. He had seen people who were infected by his blood. They either died or suffered a fate worse than death. "Don't you feel bad?" he asked. The little girl was holding a cup and gulping down water. Hearing this, she raised her head and looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" He said, "Physical discomfort? It's very painful. Your heart is burning and your lungs are hot. It's like 10,000 ants are gnawing at your body." These were all the feelings he got from the few survivors. Everyone was different. She thought about it seriously and shook her head. Forget it. She was infected in her mother's womb. She was born in this terrible torture. She had never experienced a day of normal life. For her, discomfort was normal. After another 3 days he went out. When he came back, there was a trace of his opponent's blood on him. She lost control. After waking up, she did not remember the damage she had done. She just could not find her cup. She probably understood something. When she saw him, the first thing she said was, "I'm not a little monster." A month later, he brought her back to the organization. In the past few years, in order to better adapt to life here, he joined an organization called Kuanping and became an assassin. "Do you remember what you wanted to call me?" he asked her. She nodded and said obediently, "Godfather." "Godfather, how old are you?" she asked him. He looked at the dark corridor like the mouth of an abyss, and said indifferently, 16. Converted to the age of the earth, it was about this number. Gu Jiao showed amazing talent in the organization. When she was 13, she got her own codename Shadow. This meant that she finally became an official member of the organization. She was no longer an 8-year-old girl who did not know anything. She already knew that she was different from ordinary people. There seemed to be some strange and violent factors in her body. When she encountered blood, she would lose control. There was no cure, only control. When she was 15 years old, she received her first mission, to retrieve stolen information. There were 8 people in total, and they had a lot of guns. She was wearing a white knee-length dress. Her waist was slender, and her long black hair was soft and shiny. She had a clean and young face. She had the purest spirit of a young girl. She stood on the side of the road with her hands behind her back. From time to time, she would look at the passing cars. Her pitiful appearance was enough to arouse the desire of any man to protect her. As expected, a small truck with goods stopped beside her. The person in the truck was her mission target. She thought that she was acting alone. Little did she know that in a tall building in the distance, a man in a black trench coat was staring at her. The man's eyes were cold, and his eyes were cold. He had one hand in the pocket of his trench coat, and the other hand was holding a sniper rifle. Her acting was terrible. Her smile was not good at all. Soon she was exposed. In the end, she had to use violence to get through. She kicked the man who was lying on the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face. She curled her lips and said in disdain, "Can't take a beating at all." She turned and left with the results of today. After walking about 30 to 40 meters, the unconscious man on the ground suddenly woke up. He pulled out the gun at his waist and aimed at Gu Jiao's back. However, before he could pull the trigger, the man upstairs picked up the silenced sniper rifle in his hand and shot him in the head, without even opening the sniper scope. At that moment, a rumbling truck sped past Gu Jiao. The loud rumbling noise covered the sound of the bullet piercing through the air. Gu Jiao had no idea that she was in danger. When she arrived at the meeting place, her godfather's black pickup was already waiting for her on the side of the road. "Ah, godfather." She tilted her head and walked over in surprise. With her hands behind her back, she bent her slender waist and looked at him through the window. "Isn't Cheetah here to pick me up?" He put one hand on the steering wheel and said expressionlessly. He had a last-minute mission and left first. Gu Jiao said, "Oh." She opened the door and sat in the passenger seat. He said calmly, "Seatbelt." Gu Jiao obediently fastened her seatbelt. Then, she showed him a small metal box that she had won this time. She said proudly, "All the data is inside. Am I awesome?" He nodded indifferently and started the car. The soft and warm wind blew in, and her smooth black hair was gently blown up. She turned around to look for food in the back seat. This action closed the distance between the two of them. Her hair, which exuded the fragrance of a young girl, brushed against his face. It was a little itchy. After returning to the organization, he said to Gu Jiao, "Come over in a bit. We need to take blood." Oh. Gu Jiao would come to the medical cabin every month to take blood. She was used to it and never asked why. The Marshal of the Empire should be called Godfather now. After taking Gu Jiao's blood, the Godfather went to the equipment for analysis. The results were the same as before. K93's energy substance had an extremely strong replication ability. The concentration in the blood showed no signs of decreasing at all. This was a very strange phenomenon. Since he came here, he had been in a state of constant consumption, because he couldn't supply K93 with energy. To put it bluntly, his life would be shorter than if he was in K93. However, the energy substance he needed could be replicated infinitely in her body. He still couldn't explain why, but what he was sure of was that he could use her energy to replenish his life. The stronger she was, the faster the energy substance in her body replicated, and the more beneficial it would be for him to extend his life. "Godfather, the food is ready. Today's sweet and sour fish is your favorite." She suddenly appeared at the entrance of the examination room. Her cute young girl head poked in. Her eyes blinked, as if they could speak. She wasn't like this to outsiders. Only in front of him would she let down all of her defenses. He calmly turned off the equipment. She was just an experimental subject, an energy supply to extend his life. He wouldn't develop any feelings for her. While eating, her phone lit up. He sat across from her and casually glanced at it. She picked it up and looked at it. She suddenly said to him, "I don't have any missions this weekend. Can I go out and play? Someone asked me out." His hand that was picking up rice paused. "Man or woman?" Gu Jiao said honestly, "Senior." "No," he said calmly. "Oh." Gu Jiao lowered her head and continued eating. He looked at her coldly. "Are you disappointed? Senior said he would take me surfing. I'm looking forward to it." She was born different from normal people. She had almost no friends. This was the first person who said he would take her out to play. "It's not far," she said. "It's in Coastal City. It's less than a 2-hour drive." He put down his chopsticks and slowly wiped the corners of his mouth with the napkin on the plate. "Go if you want." The listless little quail raised her head and looked at him energetically. "Godfather, do you want to go?" He said calmly, "No." "Childish." Gu Jiao happily went to pack her things. The next morning, she went to the agreed place to meet with her senior. Her godfather went to the organization. As soon as he entered the door, he ran into his assistant in a hurry. Because he was too anxious, he didn't see him. If it was in the past, he wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Today he was probably free. For the first time he asked, "What happened?" The assistant was startled. "King? It's like this. There's a mission in Coastal City. It was supposed to be assigned to Cheetah, but I can't contact him. This kid probably went somewhere to pick up girls last night. I'm going to contact Black Eagle." "Coastal City?" he asked. "Yes," the assistant said. He said calmly, "No need to contact Black Eagle. I'll go." As soon as he said that, the assistant was shocked again. But it's just an E-grade mission. How long has it been since you took on a mission below S level?" Chapter 1007. The senior who was dating Gu Jiao was called Shi Yi. He was 17 years old this year, and was only 2 years older than Gu Jiao. He was the school beau, and the top student of number 1 middle school. He came from a wealthy family, and was good at basketball. Many girls were chasing after him. However, he was attracted to Gu Jiao, who was always alone. Others said that Gu Jiao was very strange. She always gave people a cold and unapproachable feeling. Being glanced at by her would make one's hair stand on end for a few days. However, in his opinion, this kind of girl was special enough. "There's a bonfire party tonight. I've booked a room. Don't worry. It's 2 rooms. Shi Yi scratched his head shyly. "Of course, if you don't want to stay here, I can send you back earlier." "It's okay. I want to watch the bonfire party." Gu Jiao looked at him and smiled. "This is the first time someone has invited me out to play." Shi Yi was mesmerized by her smile. She was usually cold and aloof, but when she smiled, it was even more beautiful than the spring scenery in March. Shi Yi hurriedly said, If you like, I can take you out to play every day." Gu Jiao reached out her hand to him. Shi Yi was stunned. Were they going to hold hands? He was so excited that his throat moved. His palms were sweaty, and he wiped them on his clothes. Just as he was about to take her hand, he heard her say, "Room card." Shi Yi was so embarrassed that he quickly pulled his hand back. He took out a room card and handed it to her. "It's a room with a sea view. The one with the best view." Actually, it wasn't. The presidential suite with the best view had already been booked. However, the 2 rooms that he booked were also very good. Gu Jiao took the room card and went to room 709. When she opened her backpack and was about to change into her carefully prepared swimsuit, she was instantly dumbfounded. She held up a ball of colorful and ugly fabric. "Where's my bikini? How did it become a one-piece swimsuit? And such a long skirt? Who touched her bag? How infuriating. Such a conservative and old style." It was obvious that it was the godfather's style. When he wore his own clothes, even the top button on his collar would be fastened. "What? I'm not even allowed to wear a bikini," Gu Jiao muttered. Suddenly, an idea flashed through her mind. She called the front desk and said, "I want a set of bikinis." The receptionist's gentle voice came from the phone. "I'm sorry, madam. Our hotel is out of bikinis. Gu Jiao looked at the deserted beach and said, I don't see many customers. Why are they sold out? The receptionist looked at the young man in a black trench coat and sunglasses in embarrassment. She covered the microphone and said in a low voice, It's sold out. And it was all bought by this handsome guy alone. Who would have thought that he was such a pervert? The receptionist hung up the phone and laughed dryly. She handed over the room card and said, The clothes will be sent to your room later. The godfather took the room card and left without looking back. The assistant's voice came from the Bluetooth earpiece. There's a change of plans. He'll arrive at night. Do you want me to book a room for you? The godfather said indifferently. No, it's already booked. Huh. On the other end of the phone, the assistant looked at his phone in disbelief. For a moment, he suspected that he had dialed the wrong number. The godfather hated spending the night outside the most. He actually booked a room for himself? Did he know in advance that there was a change of plans? He opened his mouth and said, That. The godfather hung up the phone. In the end, Gu Jiao could only put on the ugly and old-fashioned one-piece swimsuit with a look of disgust. When Shi Yi, who was drinking on the beach, saw her in this outfit, he almost choked to death. Was she really not stealing his grandma's swimsuit? He almost thought that his grandma had caught him on a date just by looking at the swimsuit. However, Gu Jiao had a good foundation. She was a 15-year-old girl with a slim body. The areas that should be developed were very well, and the areas that should not be developed were not fat at all. Her waist was so thin that it could be held with one hand, and her legs were long and straight. Her snow-white skin was like jade, and there was a tattoo of a fallen angel on her right ankle, which made her legs look even more white. Of course, students couldn't get tattoos. This one was pasted on. Shi Yi's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. In the presidential suite that faced the beach, the godfather was wearing sunglasses and standing on the sunny balcony. He had one hand in his pocket and the other holding a glass of red wine. He was staring at a certain reckless girl with a dangerous look in his eyes. Gu Jiao was wearing the most old-fashioned clothes, but it couldn't hide her white skin and beauty. Not only was Shi Yi infatuated with her, but many people also came to talk to her. Gu Jiao didn't have time to pay attention to them. She wanted to surf. It was her first time surfing, and Shi Yi taught her step by step. The young man and woman were full of youthfulness and the sour smell of love. Eyesore, the godfather said as he drank the red wine. The assistant's confused voice came from the Bluetooth earpiece. What eyesore? The godfather stared at the little girl, who was laughing so hard that she was swaying back and forth. Nothing. Gu Jiao was a fast learner, and surfing was no exception. After an hour, she was better than Shi Yi. Shi Yi was exhausted. He hugged his surfboard to the beach and panted as he looked at Gu Jiao, who was enjoying herself. She was as excited as a little sparrow, as if she had endless energy. So nice, so cute. Shi Yi sat on the beach with his hands on the sand behind him. He looked at his girl with a smile and felt very satisfied. Gu Jiao played until it was dark. She was hungry, so she put away the surfboard. The two went back to the hotel to change their clothes. Shi Yi booked a barbecue stall. There were already many guests there, and the aroma of barbecue and cumin filled the small square. Shi Yi let Gu Jiao sit while he ran around to get the ingredients and set up the stove. The young master of the Shi family was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. It was the first time he was so attentive to a girl. He had practiced at home, and the taste of the barbecue was not bad. Gu Jiao said, Honey, honey, I like sweet things. But the godfather didn't let her eat too much, saying that it would spoil her teeth. Okay. Shi Yi brushed a layer of crystal clear honey on the barbecue with his face full of soot. Is it good? Shi Yi asked her. Gu Jiao ate the barbecue. Her mouth was very busy, and she nodded like a little hamster. Shi Yi smiled happily. On the other side, the godfather was ready to take action. Tonight's mission was to intercept a batch of goods. The reason why it was only rated as Class E was because the other party's background was not big, and their armed forces were not strong. According to the initial information, the operation was supposed to be carried out in the afternoon, when there were few people around. However, the other party came late, and the number of people on the beach doubled. It was a bit tricky. What was more tricky was that the organization's information was wrong. It was not 10 pounds of goods, but 50 pounds. And it was taken over by another big shot. Things were getting troublesome. The Godfather jumped down from the roof and came to the trading room. He raised his gun with a silencer and shot one person at a time, knocking down a large number of people. At this moment, two accomplices who had just returned from outside opened the door. The two of them saw the corpses on the ground, closed the door, and fled. "Do they have any more goods on them?" The Godfather asked the investor who was kneeling on the ground coldly. The investor nodded in fear. The Godfather opened the door vigilantly and put the silencer back into the holster on his waist, covering it with his windbreaker. At this time, Gu Jiao and Shiyi had just finished their barbecue and went to the snack booth. Shiyi bought her an ice cream. She lowered her head and licked it, dipping her mouth in the cream. Shiyi smiled and reached out to wipe her mouth. She suddenly turned her head and looked at a figure flashing by in the night. "Godfather? What?" Shiyi did not understand and thought that she was deliberately avoiding his touch. He quickly reached into his pocket and awkwardly handed her a tissue. Gu Jiao did not take it. She stuffed the ice cream into his hand and walked away. "Gu Jiao! Gu Jiao!" Shiyi called out twice but failed to stop her. He grabbed the ice cream and chased after her. Gu Jiao did not catch up with the Godfather. Instead, she turned her head and saw a man in a silver suit holding Shiyi with a knife as he walked out from behind a flower bed. Shiyi was just an ordinary high school student, so he could not help but show some fear in this situation. But to Shiyi's shock, Gu Jiao's eyes were calm. The man in the suit shouted, "Don't move! Don't come over, or I'll kill him!" Gu Jiao's aura suddenly changed. She began to emit a chilling murderous aura. "Let him go!" The man in the suit's eyes flashed. The blade of the knife was pressed against Shiyi's neck and directly cut a line of blood. He whispered, "Don't make a sound or I'll kill you." But Shiyi did not listen to him. Shiyi suppressed the fear in his heart and trembled as he shouted, "Watch your back!" No one saw how Gu Jiao did it. She turned around and pierced the throat of the sneak attacker with the spike in her hand. Blood splattered all over her face. The man fell to the ground in disbelief. Even in death, he did not close his eyes in horror. Gu Jiao kicked the gun up and held it firmly in her hand. She turned around and shot the man in the suit in the thigh. This gun was also equipped with a silencer, so the sound was not loud. Gu Jiao originally wanted to shoot the man in the head, but in order not to scare Shiyi, she chose to shoot the man in the thigh. The man was in so much pain that he let go of Shiyi and fell to the ground. He hurriedly tried to pull the gun out, but Gu Jiao shot him in the wrist and shattered it. After making sure that he could not fight back, Gu Jiao came in front of Shiyi. Looking at the blood on his neck, she frowned and reached out with her fingertips. She subconsciously took a step back as well. Gu Jiao's hand froze in midair. Gu Jiao tilted her head and looked at him in a daze. She did not understand what he was afraid of. Shiyi looked at Gu Jiao in horror, and then looked at the half-melted ice cream in his hand. He wanted to protect her even if he had to risk his life. But he was also frightened by her. How could she? Gu Jiao could not read his emotions. She thought about it seriously and pointed the gun at the man in the suit on the ground. "Are you afraid that he will hurt you again? Then I will kill him." "Stop!" Shiyi roared. Gu Jiao looked up in a daze and looked into his red eyes. She did not understand and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Shiyi looked at this junior, who could kill without blinking and still be so calm. He suddenly felt that he could not breathe. He stepped back until he turned around. He did not know if it was out of fear or disgust, but he quickly left the place. Gu Jiao looked at his back and murmured, "I just want to protect you." The night wind blew. She looked a little lonely. Her little head drooped as she slowly walked back. As she walked, she saw a shadow on the ground. She subconsciously looked up and saw her godfather, who was wearing black trousers and a white shirt, sitting on the flower bed with his hands in his pockets. The flower bed was quite high, but his legs were longer. Gu Jiao did not say anything, and did not continue to walk forward. "Do you like him a lot?" the godfather asked faintly. Gu Jiao said in a low voice, "It's my first time making a friend." The godfather's expression softened. He stood up elegantly and coldly, picked up the windbreaker beside him, and went to Gu Jiao. He waved his hand and put it on her. Her cold little body was instantly enveloped by his breath and warmth. She did not feel wronged, just a little stuffy. But at this moment she suddenly felt wronged. She smacked her forehead against his strong chest. The godfather raised his slender hand and gently patted her head. "My legs are numb," Gu Jiao said. The godfather sighed helplessly. He carried her on his shoulder and walked towards the hotel with his long legs. When he passed by the man in the suit whose right hand and right leg were injured by Gu Jiao, the man in the suit hurriedly took out his gun with his left hand. The godfather did not even look at him and shot him right in the heart. After returning to the presidential suite, the godfather ordered room service. Gu Jiao looked at the ice cream in front of her, which was obviously many times more expensive than the one in front of her. She swallowed her saliva and asked, "For me?" The godfather counted the goods and said indifferently, "You didn't get to eat it just now, did you?" Gu Jiao's eyes sparkled. "Then how many can I eat?" The godfather, "Half." Gu Jiao's face darkened. Gu Jiao sat cross-legged on the sofa, sipping the ice cream cone in her hand. Suddenly the doorbell rang. It was still room service. Gu Jiao thought it was delicious food again. "Come in." The door opened, and the waiter brought in a row of sexy bikinis that were late. Gu Jiao was dumbfounded. Chapter 1008. Sure, Yi returned to H City that night and never contacted Gu Jiao again. Even if he met her, he would avoid her and never have anything to do with Gu Jiao again. Gu Jiao's life went on as usual, but she didn't try to make friends easily anymore. Also, as the intensity of the training increased, she lost control more and more often. She needed to control the stimulation that blood gave her. So her godfather started to let her study medicine. When she was 16, she was in her second year of high school, but she was admitted to the Imperial Medical College as the top scorer in science in the province. When she was 17, she started to accept missions above D level. When she was 18, she received her first S-level mission. She was the first member other than her godfather to receive an S-level mission as soon as she reached adulthood. As expected of her godfather's child, the mission was to assassinate a drug lord in Continent F. Gu Jiao completed it very well. During the month she was in Continent F, her godfather rejected all the missions sent by the organization. Gu Jiao didn't know that he had rejected the missions and thought that he was doing well in the country. However, the organization noticed something. When Gu Jiao and her godfather returned to the organization, Alan, one of the three bosses, called her godfather to his office. "You've been paying too much attention to Shadow recently," Alan said straightforwardly. "That's my business," her godfather said calmly. Alan held a glass of red wine in his hand. He smiled and said, "I know you brought her back and you've been training her, but you should know the rules of the organization. If you just want to sleep with her, you can, but don't fall in love with her." Ignoring him, her godfather turned around and left. Alan looked at his back coldly and took a sip of red wine. Then, he looked at the video on the computer and said to the people in it, "We'll accept that mission, but I want 10 times the commission." Gu Jiao received another mission not long after she returned to China. The mission this time was a little special. Someone wanted to ruin the marriage between the two big families and had arranged for assassins to assassinate the bride during the wedding. After negotiating with the groom, it was decided that Gu Jiao would step into the church instead of the bride. Cheetah and Flying Eagle would lie in ambush in the dark. Once the other party made a move, they would quickly kill him. It sounded easy, but the killer had a powerful background. He was second only to King in the underworld. So this was actually a very dangerous mission. If anything went wrong, Gu Jiao's life would be in danger. Cheetah and Eagle are no match for him. Sitting on the office chair, the godfather frowned. The assistant sighed and said, "But the mission has already been assigned. It's impossible to call them back. Also, you've been refusing to accept missions recently, which has already made the higher-ups unhappy. Don't get involved in this mess anymore." The day of the mission, the godfather still went. He did not replace Cheetah or Eagle, nor did he hide in the dark. Instead, he chose to replace the groom. His disguise was so good that even Fei Ying and Cheetah did not recognize him at first glance. Gu Jiao didn't even look at the groom. The godfather asked, "Sir, do you take the lady next to you as your wife? No matter whether she is rich or poor, healthy or sick in the future, will you always be with her?" He said, "Yes, I do." Hearing the familiar voice, Gu Jiao's heart skipped a beat. She looked up in surprise. The godfather said again, "Madam, do you take the groom as your wife? No matter whether he is rich or poor, healthy or sick in the future, will you always be with him?" She looked at the man in front of her in a daze. "Godfather?" The godfather raised his slender hand and gently stroked her cheek. He looked at her deeply and asked, "Do you?" Gu Jiao was so shocked that she could not speak. At that moment, the killer who had disguised himself among the guests shot at Gu Jiao. Everything happened in a flash. Gu Jiao did not have time to react. The godfather stood in front of her and was shot twice in the chest. He also shot at the killer. The killer was shot. The scene was chaotic. The cheetah and the eagle took a long time to aim at him. This was because he was injured and could not run fast. If the godfather had not appeared, Gu Jiao would have died today, and the killer would have escaped. "Godfather." Gu Jiao supported him. The blood on his chest dyed her white wedding dress red. He forced himself to say, "Take me back to the medical cabin." The medical cabin existed in another space. The entrance was in a villa under his name. Gu Jiao sped all the way and ran countless red lights. She finally took him back to the medical cabin before he fainted. He took out the bullet and lay in the medical cabin. Every time he was injured, the energy in his body would dissipate. He was so weak that he fell asleep soon. When he opened his eyes again, he found that Gu Jiao was also lying in the medical cabin, lying motionlessly beside him. The medical cabin sensed his awakening and lit up with a soft light. With the light, he could see the situation in the medical cabin. Gu Jiao's blood was continuously flowing into his body. She didn't know how long it had been since she lost, but her rosy cheeks had become deathly pale. Even her lips had lost their usual color. "What are you doing?" he asked with a hoarse voice and a frown. Gu Jiao's eyelids moved slightly. She did not open her eyes. She was still lying on her side like a well-behaved kitten. "Don't you want my blood?" she said softly. These words came out of nowhere. At first he thought she was talking nonsense because she was too weak. But the godfather still understood. She knew everything. He brought her back, carefully cultivated her, and made her strong at all costs. It was all so that one day he could use her blood to prolong his life. "I'm willing." She leaned her forehead against his firm shoulder and said softly, "I'm willing to give my life to you." Gu Jiao fell ill. Her constitution was different from ordinary people. This was the first time she had been so sick in her life. She had a high fever of 41 degrees. Holding her was like holding a hot stove. The godfather cooked some vegetable, meatball, and ginger soup for her, which was rare. Gu Jiao drank a mouthful and instantly sobered up. Her head was no longer buzzing, and her nose was no longer blocked. She broke out in a cold sweat. It was really the worst drink in the world. The effect seems to be good. The godfather looked at her eyes that had turned from dull to sober and said, "I'll cook it for you again tomorrow." In order not to be poisoned by the godfather's dark cuisine a second time, she forced her fever to go down that night. Even his cells despised his culinary skills. The godfather did not let her return to the organization immediately. She stayed in the medical cabin for an entire month. In this month, she unlocked many new skills, such as cooking, wine, and songs from 100 years ago. She was not a good drinker and got drunk in one gulp. She did not stop when she was drunk. She held the wine bottle with one hand and stepped on the table with one foot. "Little Mia." "Music." The cute AI's voice sounded. "Music will be played for you." The godfather sat on the sofa expressionlessly and looked at someone who was drunk. The godfather had accidentally discovered a year ago that the Terminator's consciousness had not completely dissipated. However, after experiencing the impact of the black hole and the trip to space, its consciousness was in a very weak state, and sometimes it did not work. Anyway, it worked when she called it. It even acquiesced to the nickname she gave it. So how did she know that her blood was very useful to him? The case was solved. It was really hard to guard against a thief in your own home. She was very engrossed in singing. She came to his side with a wave of her hand and looked straight at him. In the next second, she changed her tune. In the brothel, she sang about meeting an old friend in a foreign land. Every step she took was filled with longing. Below the stage, she won't recognize the old acquaintance on the stage, he said about the wedding night. Everyone congratulated the beauty and the talent, didn't hear a sigh of love in the play. Usually, her acting skills were terrible, but her singing was quite good. Glancing back with a smile, it was probably nothing more than that. He lowered his eyes and drank the champagne in his glass. He had a good tolerance for alcohol, but at this moment, he seemed to be a little drunk. Gu Jiao looked at him with misty eyes. If you go to ancient times, you will definitely be the top scholar. Yes, the top scholar in martial arts. Then I will be your wife, he. She laughed like a little fool. The Godfather. Ha, you are so drunk that you don't even know what you are talking about. After another hour, Gu Jiao finally stopped. He thought that she was tired, and stood up to clean up the place. Unexpectedly, she leaned in front of him with her hands behind her back. She raised her flushed face, and looked at him without blinking. I will tell you a secret. I like you. She spoke very softly, and there was a hint of drunkenness in her tone. The Godfather was slightly stunned, but said in a normal tone, You are drunk. The AI sounded. Warm reminder. The medical system has detected that your heart rate is too fast. Do you need emergency treatment? The Godfather glared at the camera on the wall. Gu Jiao looked at him stubbornly. The Godfather's expression didn't change at all. It was still as cold as snow. Don't forget the rules of the organization. Gu Jiao said, I like you secretly. I don't want them to find out. The Godfather said coldly, It is useless even if you like me. I will never be with you. Since you already knew, you should know that I have always been using you. I took the bullet for you, because I needed you to live, to prolong my own life one day. In the living room of the medical cabin, a song suddenly sounded. I do not mean what I say. Did I make you sad? I am only using tough words to disguise my weakness. I did not mean to leave you out. The Godfather's face darkened. Gu Jiao looked at him stubbornly. I don't believe you. He walked past her coldly and said in a cold tone, It is useless if you don't believe me. I will never like you. The song in the medical cabin changed. Oh yeah, I love you in my heart. I don't know what you are thinking. Oh, I love you in my heart. The Godfather clenched his teeth and clenched his fists. The destroyer of worlds. He walked out of the living room without looking back, leaving Gu Jiao alone on the spot. The Terminator continued to court death. The song changed seamlessly. For all the pain of love, for all the pain of hate, I can no longer differentiate between love and hate. Is this it? Blood and tears fall together. My heart is broken. My trembling hands cannot stop. Unforgivable. The Godfather couldn't take it anymore. He switched off the smart mode in a second. The Terminator. Oh, the Godfather went to the bathroom to take a cold shower. The heat in his body didn't dissipate for a long time. The people of the K93 galaxy had extremely long lifespans. Their genes didn't have a strong desire to reproduce. As a result, they didn't fall in love so easily. Moreover, the stronger a person was, the less likely it was to fall in love. So had he become weaker? Or had he been on this planet for too long and gradually been assimilated by them? He stood under the shower, and the cold water poured mercilessly on his toned body. He was 195 meters tall. Years of training had given him a body that could make one's blood boil. Chest muscles, 8-pack abs, Apollo's belt, everything was just right. They contained vigorous strength, but they weren't exaggerated. Even the lines on his arms were tight and well-defined. After a full hour, he finally managed to suppress the heat of his passion. The medical cabin had a water circulation system, so he didn't have to worry about wasting water. However, it took too long. Was he so unsatisfied? What was even more tragic was that he had finally calmed down. As soon as he opened the hibernation chamber, he found that Gu Jiao had actually fallen asleep inside. This girl was so drunk that she couldn't recognize her own hibernation chamber? Terminator. He spoke, but the AI didn't respond. Only then did he remember that he had switched off the smart mode. He stared fixedly at the little girl, who was drunk to the point of unconsciousness, and lay down beside her without batting an eyelid. The hibernation chamber was quite spacious for one person to sleep in, so the two of them had to be close together. She lay on her side, her soft body pressed against his unbearable body. He felt the strangeness in his body and helplessly closed his eyes. That 1-hour cold shower was for nothing. Her fragrance was pervasive. It was like a drug that confused the mind. The more he resisted, the more it went into his bones. His exquisite Adam's apple moved. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. You slept in the wrong place. Don't blame me for being rude. He propped himself up and caressed her soft face. He lowered his head and kissed her domineeringly. Chapter 1009. Her lips were unbelievably soft. He originally wanted to just have a taste, but who knew that it would get out of hand? Gu Jiao was awakened by his kiss and groaned in a daze. Inadvertent teasing was the most fatal. He almost threw away his armor when she was whispering. He restrained himself and let go of her. His chest was heaving up and down and his breathing was short. If it wasn't for the dim light in the hibernation chamber, and Gu Jiao being so drunk, he would probably be able to see her slightly red face. Gu Jiao looked at the handsome face close to her with blurred eyes. She raised her slender fingers and pinched his hot cheeks. She said drunkenly, why am I still dreaming about this? She pinched and pinched again. He allowed her little hands to mess around on his face. His heart slowly calmed down. She was drunk. He really shouldn't take advantage of her at this time. He planned to lie back down, but who knew that Gu Jiao would grab his collar and look at him fiercely? He didn't know what she was doing, so he could only let her grab him. She was so drunk that she should be asleep, but her eyes were wide open. She looked at him very seriously, as if she was trying to discern whether he was real or fake. No, it's not a dream, she said in surprise. You secretly kissed me? He said without changing his expression. This is my hibernation chamber. You came in by yourself. Gu Jiao blinked. The effect of the alcohol was still there. Her head was buzzing, so she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this logic. Wait, it still wasn't right, she said seriously. There's more than one hibernation chamber. He said, I recognize the bed. The inexperienced Gu Jiao was successfully led astray by him. So, it seems like I'm wrong. Then, could it be that I took the initiative just now? He forced himself to look at her calmly. You said you liked me before lying in my hibernation chamber. What do you think? Gu Jiao looked down. She changed her grip on his collar from 2 hands to 4 small fingers. She only pinched a little. She felt very guilty. After a while, she closed her eyes. I'm asleep. Godfather. The godfather looked at her face that was pretending to be asleep. His eyes scanned her facial features, and finally landed on her swollen lips that he had kissed. In the end, he couldn't hold on her and kissed her again. Gu Jiao looked at him with her watery eyes. I didn't take the initiative this time. He lowered his head and gently kissed the corner of her lips. In a hoarse voice he said, It's me. Are you sober? Gu Jiao she nodded. He placed his hands on her sides and stared at her deeply. Suddenly, he opened the hibernation chamber and carried her out. Gu Jiao she curled her lips and said, You've already kissed me. Why are you still putting me back? He didn't stop when he passed by her hibernation chamber. Gu Jiao she was stunned. He carried her out of the medical cabin and walked all the way to the 2nd floor of the villa. He came to her room and imprisoned her on the soft bed. Her unique fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. He could feel his blood surging, and even his heart, which had always been calm and indifferent, was beating twice as fast. Gu Jiao she wasn't any better than him. She stared at him blankly. His cold eyes were tinged with desire. A drop of sweat slid down his forehead, and his exquisite Adam's apple moved. Gu Jiao she felt drunk again. The moonlight that night was very beautiful, but she felt that he was better than the moonlight. In a daze, she heard him say, When you graduate, I'll take you away from the organization. She remembered that she had said yes, they would leave together. Unfortunately, that day didn't come. In a dark secret room, Gu Jiao she was lying on the cold operating table. She had been injected with drugs and neurotoxins. The neurotoxins were to prevent her from losing control, and the drugs were to erase her memory bit by bit. A red light lit up on the instrument at the side. A man in a surgical gown looked at the data on the monitor and said, "This is the maximum dose. She'll become a fool if we inject her again." On the side, another doctor in a surgical gown paused and said, "The last dose. No, the risk is too high. She's still useful to the organization. The higher-ups didn't say that she should be disabled." Then half a dose. Gu Jiaoxi completely fainted after the last dose. In September of the next year, Gu Jiaoxi, Xiao Heng, Long Yi, and Chang Jing crossed the ice field and went to Dark Knight Island. This year, the ice field seemed to be colder than the previous years. On the way, they encountered a snowstorm, which caused the young couple to be separated from Long Yi and Chang Jing. It was strange. In such a heavy snowstorm, Xiao Heng drove the direwolf in the right direction. Every time, his body emitted a cold aura that was different from the imperial court. The two arrived at Dark Knight Island first. 2 days later, Chang Jing and Long Yi also arrived. Gu Jiaoxi was very surprised. Chang Jing and Long Yi are both people of Dark Knight Island. They have been with the direwolf since childhood. You're actually faster than them. Being praised by his wife, Xiao Heng was very proud in his heart. But soon he couldn't be proud. Because Gu Jiaoxi went to see that man again. He knew that accompanying Long Yi back and accompanying Chang Jing to visit relatives were all excuses. She came to sweep that man's grave. Yes, that man died miserably. In order to plant the living purple grass, he didn't hesitate to be buried in Dark Knight Island and used his flesh and blood as nourishment. But she always thought about him in her heart. He was also very jealous. He sat on the stone bench in the courtyard and inserted his hands into the warm hands. His face was dark, and his legs were shaking nonstop. Chang Jing came over with a plate of washed fruits and asked him, "Do you want to eat?" No. He expressionlessly refused. He wasn't in the mood to eat. From his angle, he could clearly see the direction of the cemetery. Gu Jiaoxi braved the biting cold wind and cleaned the snow on the grave. She was very serious and didn't care that her hands were cold and red. Xiao Heng gritted his teeth. After shaking his left leg, he shook his right leg. His small eyes were cold. Chang Jing gorged herself on the fruits. Xiao Heng glanced at him. "Don't you know how to help? You only know how to eat. Don't you see how cold her hands are? If you help her, she won't have to pay tribute to that man. You really don't know how to share the burden of your future brother-in-law. I don't want you to be my brother-in-law. You're out." Chang Jing ate by herself, but she didn't forget to leave half for Feng Wuxia. She had promised Feng Wuxia that she would bring back some fruits, fish, and prawns from Dark Knight Island on the way back to Zhao country. Long Yi. Xiao Heng looked at the hand of Gu Jiao, which was completely red from the cold, and angrily said, she was already an adult, but she didn't know how to care for herself. What would happen if Long Yi did this kind of thing? Long Yi was in the secret room and couldn't hear Xiao Heng's voice. Xiao Heng swore that he was definitely not curious. He simply went to call Long Yi out to work. He indifferently stood up and gracefully brushed off the snowflakes on his robe. Then, he coldly walked into the secret room behind the study. The passage in the secret room was already opened by a small medicine box. This was the first time Xiao Heng had come here. The corridor was pitch black, and there was an unlocked door at the end. White blazing light illuminated the area, adding a bit of mystery. A strange feeling welled up in the bottom of Xiao Heng's heart. He was sure that this was his first time here. But for some reason, he didn't feel unfamiliar. He pushed open the unlocked door. Long Yi was sitting cross-legged on the colorful floor. He was holding a photo album in his hand. In the photo album, there were only 3 people: his godfather, her previous life, and infant Long Meng Meng. When he was a child, he was very weak. He was unable to leave the healing chamber, and was also unable to grow. It was his father who gave him a lot of his blood. Only then did he wake up in the healing chamber. Xiao Heng arrived behind Long Yi. He had no intention of peeping at other people's privacy. He didn't look at the thing in Long Yi's hand, rather asked, "Why are you in a daze? Didn't you hear me? I miss him." Long Yi honestly said. Who he was, it was self-evident. Xiao Heng dangerously narrowed his eyes. Very good, Long Yi had also started. Xiao Heng endured the sea of jealousy in his heart and looked all around. he discovered that all the doors were open except for the wooden door on the right side. He subconsciously asked, why is that door closed? Long Yi smoothly said, oh, that is father's hibernation chamber. Only he can enter. After he finished speaking, he realized that Xiao Heng had arrived. This room had a security system. Outsiders were not allowed to enter. Otherwise, they would be attacked. Long Yi woke up from his dream. He quickly put down the photo album and stood up. He wanted to block Xiao Heng behind him. Unfortunately, it was too late. The green light of the detector had already landed on Xiao Heng's body. The source light flickered twice, and an ice-cold mechanical voice slowly resounded. Unknown intruder detected. Do you want to eliminate him? System pause. System error. System restart. The last time Gu Jiao came here, she also encountered the same situation. In the end, accompanied by the mechanical voice of system overload, the system crashed. Long Yi thought that this was also the same kind of malfunction. Who would have thought that the AI prompt of system overload wouldn't resound? Instead, system authentication. System restart. Reauthentication. Authentication complete. Marshall, long time no see. End of text. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.